Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to the channel. This is my new channel, so please support us. Now let's start today's story on what if Harry Potter became the source of all magic? But before we begin, comment 2 blue hearts, be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. Also, watch till the end because this story is going to be amazing. And don't forget to check out our Patreon for exclusive Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy versions, link is in the description. Now, let's begin the story. Over the centuries, as the magical world became more and more secure and isolated from the Muggle world, and the castle became more of a school than a defense structure, the room's original use was forgotten and was used for more mundane things. Eventually, as the magic within the castle and the room built up over time, and the castle became more sentient, the room also changed and evolved through time till the current result was seen. The room was also in a really bizarre magical way, in the center of the castle, which was situated exactly over an intersection of 4 different major ley lines. The actual reason why the founders had chosen this place to build their castle, there was a good concentration of magic in that area. The castle sensed that the wizard lying prone right at the center of its very heart was in major distress and needed help. So it started pumping a small fraction of the magic within it to help the boy. This helped in integrating the soul fragments into Harry's soul, changing his very nature by a slight amount. Harry gained, in addition to his previously acquired ability to speak to snakes, an experience in dueling, something which Voldemort had perfected during his younger years before his rise into notoriety. Harry would have to increase his arsenal of spells on his own for this to be of any use though. Another useful talent that he had picked up from those soul fragments would also be the knowledge of apparating as well. Voldemort had done enough apparating in his life that he could almost do so silently and without much thought in almost any position. He had also done quite a bit of apparating through moderately powered anti-apparition wards as well as under the stress of combat. And now, Harry too could do so. Not that he knew that at the moment. In addition to that, Harry also had gained Voldemort's mastery of the mind arts. After all, Voldemort had been a practicing Occlumens and Legilimens practicing the arts almost constantly ever since his 6th year when he had discovered that art. Now the body is rather conservative. Harry's magic was basically the reason why despite his relatives' treatment of him he didn't look like one of those starved refugee children from a war-torn country. Most of his magic had gone into healing him and ensuring that his body was properly nourished. This had the effect of making him magically weaker, and also stunting his magical growth. It was only because Harry was so naturally powerful that he still remained a wizard, and the Dursleys' wishes of beating the magic out of him weren't realized. As such, while he would be powerful, he would not be able to reach his full magical potential. However, Hogwarts, while sentient, wasn't intelligent, and thus had underestimated the amount of magic that Harry would need. After all, a little amount of magic, to it was more than enough power to make 2 squibs moderately powerful wizards. As a result of this, Harry had a lot of magic left over in his nearly empty core. So his body used this opportunity, and Harry's still growing core suddenly expanded so that by the time he reached his full maturity, Harry would be even more powerful than he would have ever been. There was also still enough magic left within him so that his body began to utilize it to take care of the last vestiges of malnutrition. As such, Harry filled out a bit more so that he no longer looked pinched, but lean. His height increased by an extra inch or so till he was standing at a respectable 6 feet. Hogwarts, sensing that he was still using magic to heal, decided to help a bit. The end result was the extra benefit of repairing Harry's impaired vision so he no longer was half blind without his glasses. Also, the numerous scars and bruises that Harry had collected till then healed over till they all disappeared. The notable exception being the scar on his forehead that instead of disappearing became lighter till it was barely discernible. Finally, as Harry's body no longer had any pressing needs to take care of, the magical transfer stopped, leaving a much improved Harry Potter that now lay resting in the middle of the room. Harry Potter opened his eyes a few hours later. Winston immediately closed them again, groaning. His limbs were sore, his head was pounding with a vengeance, and everything seemed way too bright. Opening his eyes again, he found himself in what looked to be a meadow, and, judging by the light in the sky, it looked to be late evening. Confused, he sat up suddenly, the pounding in his head increased, making him dizzy. Clutching his head, he squeezed his eyes shut as he waited for the feeling to pass. As he began to feel a bit normal, he opened his eyes again and took in his surroundings. The door standing at the far end as well as the way the meadow seemed to end abruptly reminded him that he was in the room of requirement. With this realization, the memories of the past came back. He briefly considered running away from the wizarding world, perhaps also writing a letter telling Voldemort that he was not interested in fighting him and getting him to agree to a ceasefire. He scoffed internally at that thought. "Dear Dark Lord," thought Harry sardonically. "How are you? I hope that your one attempt at possessing me and subsequent ejection from my mind did not cause you too much of pain and that this letter finds you in good mental health, relatively speaking. Anyway, after the numerous sojourns that we have had with each other, I have come to the realization that fighting you is not really what I want to do. The only reason I hated you is because you killed my parents, people I now realize that I never knew much. As such, since they also were the causalities of a war, and had chosen to fight against you and had lost, I find myself caring even lesser about that fact now. Thinking back on it, I also find that the other reason for fighting you, that you tried to kill me as a baby, a bit silly as well. Looking back on it, I realize that you were actually trying to carry out an act of kindness in trying to spare me the agony of growing up without parents. So there really is no reason for me to fight you. And I realize that you have nothing personal against me. Thus, I have decided to stop fighting you and let you continue on your quest for world domination. After all, it's not like I care about the fate of 1,000,000+ strangers. What have they done for me that I should care for their existence or continued happiness? As a show of good faith, I will tell you the full prophecy and will be shortly moving to Australia. I will also include my address here too. Yours faithfully, Harry Potter. Harry snorted to himself. Even in his head that sounded lame and naive. He knew that Voldemort had taken Harry's continued existence as a personal insult. To him, Harry was the one that got away, the only survivor of Voldemort's numerous attempts to kill him. The fact that he wasn't even out of school was a further blow to Voldemort's ego. The fact that Voldemort happened to be a megalomaniac only made matters worse. Harry also knew that Voldemort would not rest till Harry was dead and that he saw Harry still being alive as a threat to his power. Add in the fact that he believed in the prophecy, and thus finding the full contents of which would make him even more convinced that as long as Harry lived, he was a threat to his dreams of world domination. Harry was positively certain beyond a doubt that Voldemort would ensure that Harry died by his own hand. Harry was sure that the madman would have first taken over Britain before going after him. And then Harry would be royally screwed since Voldemort would have legitimate authority behind him. Also, now that he thought about it, Dumbledore would also spend his time and effort in tracking him down too, since he too believed in that prophecy. All in all, running away right now was more than trouble than it was worth. So Harry dismissed the option of just leaving everybody to Voldemort, as much as he felt that the wizarding world deserved it. Besides, he did have friends here, and he wasn't willing for them to suffer. And, come to think of it, he did not fancy living life on the run. With this in mind, Harry started plotting ways in which he could bring down Voldemort. He knew that the Dark Wizard was more powerful and had a lot of experience, something that Harry had no hope of achieving. Harry knew that he himself was powerful. After all, he could produce a Patronus at 13, something many full-grown wizards had trouble doing. He also could resist the Imperius cast by Voldemort himself. Again, something most wizards couldn't do. However, all that power wouldn't be of much help to Harry without experience, and there Voldemort had the advantage. Unless Harry mused, I can catch him by surprise, get him when he least expects it and overwhelm him. Harry trailed off. That plan could be looked into much later. In the meantime, perhaps it would be more prudent to look into training himself in fighting competently. Now that he thought about it, he supposed that he should be thankful that the Death Eaters had been so focused on the prophecy last night, or he was sure that he would have had his ass handed to himself. With that in mind, Harry made a mental checklist. First off, he obviously needed to get the appropriate books which he was sure wouldn't be found in the school library. Even if they were around, he was sure that Dumbledore wouldn't approve of his reading material. I bet that old twat would make some excuse and take those books away while acting as if he was doing me a bloody favor, thought Harry scathingly. With that thought, Harry got up, and as he took his first step, stumbled. Startled, he looked down. The ground looked farther than he was used to. He then noticed that his arms were sticking out by a few extra inches from the sleeves of his robes. After spending a moment looking at his sleeves, the next thing that came to Harry's notice was his vision. Things looked a bit too clear to him. With a jolt, he realized that he was not wearing his glasses as he clearly could see the item in question at the corner of his eye, something that was impossible a few short hours ago. Harry shrugged. He was used to strange things happening around him and as such couldn't find much to complain about right now, seeing as he was rather pleased with the results. He absently noticed that his robes were a bit tight across his chest. His trainers also seemed a bit snug. Just as Harry was debating walking back to the dorm barefoot, as he refused to let anyone see Vernon's old socks on his feet, a new pair of trainers and socks suddenly appeared in front of him. Realizing the significance of the room that he was currently occupying, Harry, concentrated, and a set of new clothes right down to underwear appeared in front of him. Harry changed into these, discarding his old soiled robes and tatty trainers before leaving the room, not bothering to take his old clothes and shoes. He had a vague thought that the room would be able to recycle those. Pocketing his glasses, he exited the room of requirement and headed towards Gryffindor Tower. As Harry entered the tower, he found a nearly empty common room. A glance out of the window showed that it was actually late morning, despite the scenery Harry had woken up to in the room. Harry remembered that today was a Hogsmeade weekend. The few first and second years that were looking at him warily further proved this theory. Sighing, Harry went back out and headed outside. He had no desire to be gawked at by titchy little 11 and 12-year-olds, nor did he feel like sitting in his dorm. As he headed towards a secluded corner in the grounds, a flash of white caught his eye. Turning, he noticed Dumbledore striding across the grounds, with, Harry was surprised to note, Professor McGonagall, who was leaning on a cane. They were headed to the gates, deep in conversation. Harry followed at a distance and watched as Dumbledore bade the deputy headmistress goodbye before disapparating. McGonagall turned around and started as she found Harry Potter staring back at her. She absently noticed something different about him, but could not place her finger on it. "Good afternoon, Mr. Potter, how may I help you?" said McGonagall in a concerned tone. She had heard about what had transpired before and was worried about the boy in front of her. "Afternoon, Professor," said Harry casually. "I was just headed to Hogsmeade and I couldn't help but notice you and Professor Dumbledore. I gather that he has gone to meet Fudge again," he said, the light coming surprisingly easily to him. McGonagall raised an eyebrow in surprise. "The headmaster is a busy man, Mr. Potter, even more so thanks to recent events." Harry flinched a bit at her words. "He has been summoned by our esteemed minister for his advice on certain matters. Will Fudge be giving Professor Dumbledore his old positions back then? If Minister Fudge knows what's good for him, he would be doing that today itself," said McGonagall wryly, though, considering his track record of late, that may be debatable. "It looks like Professor Dumbledore has a busy day ahead of him then." "Indeed, Mr. Potter, I suspect he may not be able to make it till midnight at the earliest. Was there anything you required of him?" "Oh, nothing really, Professor, it was just idle curiosity," Harry lied again. McGonagall regarded Harry with concern. "Are you all right, Harry? From what I have heard about what happened in the ministry, I thought that it must have been rather traumatizing for you. I for one did not expect you to be out and about today of all days." "I'm fine, Professor. I guess that the reality of the situation hasn't sunk in yet. I just wanted some time alone for myself so I could think, and decided to take a walk in the village," said Harry, putting his training with the Dursleys to good use. The previous revelations and events had gone a long way in destroying any lingering reservations he had of manipulating and lying to others for his own gains. "Very well, Harry, if you need anything, my door will always be open to you. Should you need help, don't hesitate to ask." "Sure, thank you, Professor," said Harry. He tried not to think about how helpful she had been when he had tried to share his concerns about the Philosopher's Stone, or how helpful she had been when people were spreading rumors about his being the heir of Slytherin, or when Draco Malfoy had been distributing those badges. In fourth year, he really did, but he was only human in the end. And currently rather ticked off at the moment. Harry somehow managed to keep his face straight as he brushed by her. As he passed through the gates, he scowled before his expression changed to one of anticipated excitement. Dumbledore was not in Hogwarts at the moment, and wouldn't be there for the whole day. Also, since the students were out in the village, Harry wouldn't be missed. Especially since his friends, he thought with a twinge of guilt, were in the hospital wing. In fact, none of the teachers would be expecting him to show up at dinner either. Not that Harry planned on staying that long, but it was something to think of. Harry furtively made his way to the outskirts of the village. He was jubilant that he hadn't been seen by anyone he knew or recognized by the throng of students mingling around. However, that was short-lived when the problem of actually getting to Diagon Alley came to him. He initially thought of using the night bus, but was leery as he knew that would draw a lot of attention. What with the racket that machine could kick up? The fact that it looked like Ernie Prang practiced playing Need for Speed a few dozen times before getting the job of driving that purple triple-decker monstrosity, coupled with the prospect of meeting Stan Shunpike, who considered it his sacred duty to stick his overly pimply nose into other people's business, Harry was understandably hesitant in using that mode of transportation. The flow was out of the question as he would need to get to the fireplace in the Three Broomsticks, where he risked being recognized. He could not exactly break into a house, as that would probably gain him even more attention than he needed. The Hog's Head also was out of the question as he was pretty sure that the bartender there was rather chummy with a certain meddlesome old man. If only he could apparate, he thought wistfully, then he would be able to get there in no time and with minimal fuss. Lost in thoughts of being able to appear instantly at his destination, Harry did not notice a slight shift in his magic, busy as he was in imagining himself just at the entrance of Diagon Alley. But he definitely noticed that his environment had changed. In front of him, instead of the hills surrounding Hogsmeade, he saw Diagon Alley with Gringotts rising up in the distance. Startled, he looked back to see the archway that would lead to the Leaky Cauldron. Did I just apparate? Thought Harry incredulously. From what he had heard from Fred and George when he had badgered them about apparating, the process was supposed to be rather difficult, accompanied by a sensation of being squeezed through a tube. However, Harry hadn't felt that, nor did he feel any difficulty. In fact, it just felt right. It was the same feeling he had when he had first flown on a broom. That he somehow, on some instinctual level, knew what to do, and had done it for quite a few times. Shrugging, Harry set off toward Gringotts. He had more important matters to take care of in little time. He also needed money. Entering the bank, Harry noticed that it being a Saturday afternoon, the bank was relatively empty. Moving towards the nearest free teller, he said with a hint of trepidation, "Excuse me, I would like to access my vault please, but I don't have the key." "So was Wonder." "Name," came the surly reply, cutting Harry of mid-sentence. Harry Potter," said Harry, stammering a little. The goblin brought out a bronze disc and a knife and said, "Place some of your blood here to verify your identity." Harry sliced his finger and squeezed out a few drops and handed the knife and disc back. He watched, startled, as the goblin licked some of the blood from the disc off. Wearing a thoughtful look as if he was sampling a glass of vintage wine, the goblin finally said, "Very well, Mr. Potter, you are who you say you are. I will get somebody to escort you to your account manager." "Griphook. Did you just lick my blood?" said Harry incredulously, and not with a hint of disgust. "Trust me, Mr. Potter, I did not enjoy the experience," said the teller impatiently. "Now if you do not have any more questions, please follow Griphook. If you have more questions, find someone else to annoy." All right, no need to be so snarky," Harry muttered under his breath, turning away. Hearing the teller snort, he turned back and saw the goblin tap his nameplate wearing a look of amusement. Looking at it, Harry understood the reason for the goblin's amusement. He snorted at the word Snarktooth written there and hurried to catch up to his escort. Griphook led him through another door at the back of the bank and into a long corridor interspersed with more doors. Harry remembered his name, of course, who wouldn't, since that was the first goblin name he had heard, but didn't see the need to point that out. He doubted that the goblin would take kindly to it or care. For all Harry knew, they may take offense to it. He silently resolved to look up goblin culture in the near future. After all, they did handle his money. Near the end of the corridor, the line of doors stopped, leaving a blank stretch of walls that continued on into darkness. Harry wondered what there was at the end before turning his attention back to Griphook as he knocked on the slightly opulent door that said, "Gornick." Entering, he greeted the goblin that was seated at the desk on the other side of the large and spacious office and was bid to sit. Settling down into the large armchair, Harry got straight down to business. He figured from his earlier experiences that goblins did not waste time with pleasantries and liked to get to the heart of the matter. It also didn't hurt that he was currently strapped for time. Leaning forward, Harry said, Good day to you, Account Manager Gornick. I would like to inquire about the state of my accounts. It's just Gornick, Mr. Potter. Managing your account is just my job, not my title. I was wondering when you would come in, Mr. Potter, said the large elderly goblin at the other end. I was expecting you on the day of your 15th birthday. Nonetheless, you are here now, although I do not see your magical guardian around. Will he be joining us shortly? He said, looking at Harry inquiringly. Harry was surprised at this last statement. He didn't know that he had a magical guardian, but he had a sneaking suspicion as to who that could be. I had no idea that I had a magical guardian, he said slowly. I came here on my own when I knew that I would be free and unsupervised. You should have been informed about your magical guardian, Mr. Potter, said the elderly goblin. However, it is quite easy to figure out who it is. All Muggle-born children are assigned a magical guardian when they reach the age of 11 and are sorted into their house at Hogwarts. Normally, that person is the minor's head of house, but considering your, unique situation, the headmaster has seen it fit to take on that responsibility. But I am not Muggle-born, said Harry, strangely insulted at being compared to Muggle-borns. Indeed not, Mr. Potter, said the goblin, but since you were Muggle-raised, it was considered prudent by all parties involved that you should be treated as Muggle-born. At any rate, he continued, ignoring the sour look on Harry's face, the reality is that your magical guardian is Albus Dumbledore, but you should know that. It is his duty to inform you of that fact. Surely, he told you in one of your meetings. What meetings? Said Harry, nonplussed. The mandatory meetings that all wards have with their magical guardians during their first 2 years of schooling, of course. Then Harry remembered the odd times that Hermione Granger used to disappear for a few hours all those years ago. He never thought to ask her where she had gone and was quite happy to assume that she was in the library. Harry supposed that she might have had her scheduled meetings with McGonagall. Suddenly it made more sense to Harry on how she seemed to know a lot about the magical world. McGonagall was teaching her. It also brought a new meaning to all that waffle about the house being family that McGonagall had been spouting when she was talking to them before their sorting, now that he thought about it. I never had any of those meetings, said Harry. He was a bit miffed at the headmaster's inattentiveness. It would have been nice to have some help fitting into the wizarding world, instead of feeling stupid whenever a subject he did not know of was talked about. That is rather irregular, said the goblin, frowning. It is the duty of the magical guardian to help the ward to acclimatize to the wizarding world. It seems that Dumbledore has neglected his duties. It wouldn't be the first time, Harry thought bitterly, before a thought came to him. Has Dumbledore tried to access my accounts or withdrawn anything? Let me see, said Gornick, standing up and moving to a filing cabinet nearby. Taking out a ledger, he sat back down and leafed through it. From your trust vault, the only withdrawals made were made by you on the summer before your first, second and third years, and by a Molly Weasley on the summer before your fourth and fifth years, correct? He said, looking up at Harry. Seeing him nod, he looked back down. From your family vault, your magical guardian has taken out 2 heirlooms, 1 pensieve and 1 invisibility cloak. The pensieve had been loaned by your grandfather indefinitely until he or his heirs, mainly you, decide to reclaim it. While the cloak was taken on the summer of 1998 before you began your first year, the reason being that it was to be given to you shortly. Did you receive the cloak? Harry seethed. That old bastard. He takes my cloak from my family vault and has the gall to pretend that it was given to him by my father. Reining his emotions, he affirmed the receipt of the cloak, sounding rather calm. Also, in addition to this, a small monetary stipend has been set up for your caregivers, the Dursleys, I believe. How much, and who set that up? Said Harry, his voice quavering a bit as he tried not to explode. Around 500 galleons per month for 12 months for the first 10 years between 1988 and 1997. This amount was reduced from 97 onwards to 200 galleons per month for 3 months. At the current rate of exchange, that would be 2,500 GBP and 1,000 GBP a month respectively. It was done to cover the costs of your upkeep and well-being. Upon hearing this, Harry became enraged. However, he knew that it would serve no purpose here. Automatically, as if his brain knew what to do, he found the rage being marginalized. This gave him a sense of tranquility and an air of peace. The rage was there, but kept aside for a while. Focusing back on the goblin in front of him, Harry said, is there any way I can recover all that money back? Because it seems that they have not used any of that money on me or my well-being. Gornick narrowed his eyes, if you saying what I think you are saying, Mr. Potter, then it looks like your relatives have breached their contract. Harry's mind filled with possibilities. The chance to get back at the Dursleys was pretty enticing. What can be done? Your relatives have signed a magical contract when they agreed to raise you as it was written in their letter. A duplicate has been filed in a Muggle subsidiary of ours, the Bank of Scotland. I could get an investigation started and then alert the Muggle authorities, but that may take a while. It's the only shot we have of prosecuting them, Gornick said. Get that done then, they shall pay for stealing from me, said Harry. I will be more than happy to oblige Mr. Potter, as technically they have also stolen from Gringotts as well, and we do not like thieves, said Gornick with a feral smile. Though, he continued disgruntled, we still haven't found that thief who broke into our bank 5 years ago. Oh, I know what you are talking about, said Harry suddenly. His name was Quirinus Quirrell, and he was the defense against the dark arts teacher in my first year. I did not know that you were still looking for him, or else I would have said something. And how do you know of the thief's identity? Said Gornick with underlying excitement in his voice. He admitted it to me, and before you ask, there is no point looking for him since he is dead. I am aware of that, Mr. Potter, said Gornick, but how did he die? I killed him, Harry said simply. It was in self-defense though, he hastily added. Gornick looked at Harry for a while, an inscrutable look on his face. Before he opened his mouth, was his death long drawn and painful. He sounded almost hopeful. Thinking of the events of his first year, Harry replied with a small amount of relish, oh yes, he was practically burnt to a crisp. Gornick bared his teeth. Good, I will have the promised reward transferred to your vault as soon as possible. Reward? Asked Harry blankly. Of course, said Gornick, you have done a great service to our bank, and we goblins never forget our debts, so as a token of our appreciation, we gift you with 500,000 galleons. And we also will give you the full contents of the thief's family vault as a bonus for doing our job for us and killing him in such a fitting way. That vault currently has 750 galleons in liquid cash and valuables. Wait, said Harry, not that I don't appreciate the gesture, but what about the other members of the Quirrell family? Won't they suffer? No need to fret, Mr. Potter, said Gornick dismissively, the only surviving relative of the thief happens to be his widowed sister, a Mrs. Umbridge if I am not mistaken, he said. Oh, said Harry, her approval of him as a teacher making sense to him now. In that case, thank you, said Harry with a vindictive gleam in his eye. It's Gringotts who should be thanking you, Mr. Potter, said Gornick. He continued with a sorrowful tone, though if I remember correctly, a dragon was grievously injured and the door of the vault needed to be replaced. It looks like we'll have to take out the remaining expenses from the thief's next of kin now that his vault is no longer available. He sighed regretfully, though the glint in his eyes told another story, poor Madame Umbridge. Indeed, chuckled Harry imagining Umbridge's face when she found out. It looked like she had made enemies with her bankers, foolish of her really, Harry mused. Anyway, back to business, said Gornick briskly, rubbing his gnarled hands. He reached out and took out a piece of parchment. Tapping it, he turned it to Harry. This is the current status of your vaults, including the reward that you have earned. He gave Harry a minute to peruse it before continuing. As you can see, your net worth happens to be around 550 million galleons. Admittedly, the Potter fortune has dropped in value since it has lain dormant for all these years as some investments have not done so well, but now that you are of an age where you can claim the vaults and manage them, it can be reactivated. I have many plans for it. Hopefully, your family will regain its billionaire status by the end of the next fiscal year. Harry was stunned. He knew that the Potters were an ancient and wealthy family after having researched everything he could about them the first chance he got, after all who wouldn't. But this was staggering. Well, at least he wouldn't need to work to earn his living. His thoughts were diverted as Gornick pushed some sheets of parchment towards him. You will need to sign these to get full control of your vaults, he said, and you need to sign these to void any claims your magical guardian has over you, since he has proven to be ineffective. He added, taking out another sheaf. As Harry started signing, Gornick continued, as your account manager, I will be able to make decisions which will help build your wealth, As your fortunes are tied in with mine, it will be mutually beneficial to both of us. Also, as my first act as your account manager, I have compiled a list of investments that I recommend you authorize, along with a list of businesses that you are either the investor of or included as partner. Harry spotted a name in the list and exclaimed, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. They made me their partner. Indeed, Mr. Potter, after all, you did give them money to help their business, said Gornick. A fine investment. I predict that their inventiveness may give Zonkos a run for its money. Speaking of which, here's a list of investments that have gone bad or are not going to be of benefit to you, he said, giving Harry another list. Harry cleared his throat. Is there a way to replace my vault keys? I am afraid that I no longer am in possession of them since Mrs. Weasley has forgotten to return my trust vault key, and I have never been given my family vault key. I would also like to make a withdrawal. You should be careful with your keys, Mr. Potter. You never know when a person could get hold of it and use it to help themselves to your money, admonished Gornick with a frown. At any rate, he continued, after watching Harry squirm a bit, sign here and we will issue you a new set of keys. Your family vault keys are with me and will not be needed after the wards to the vault are calibrated to your touch. After Harry signed the latest batch of forms, Gornick said, Excellent, everything is in order. I will carry out the instructions and start making the necessary transactions, and we can start rebuilding your fortunes. At that moment, somebody knocked at the door. When bid to enter, the person turned out to be another goblin. Upon looking at the occupants inside, he said, Ragnarok has requested your presence. The both of you. Surprised, Gornick stood up and strode towards the door, Harry following him. Harry noticed that this time they had gone to the far end of the corridor where a single ornate door stood, guarded by two burly goblin guards. Entering, Harry saw an office as big as the Dursley house. At the far end behind a large desk, sat a richly appointed goblin, in front of whom was another elderly goblin. Ragnarok stood up from behind his desk and said in a gravelly tone, Ah Gornick, so glad of you to join us, and Mr. Potter as well. Come, sit. Waving his hand at the surly-looking goblin in front of him he said, This is Grimjaw, the head of the Black Accounts. Good to meet you too, sir, said Harry politely. May I ask what this is about? He added in a slightly curious tone. Ragnarok and Grimjaw gave Harry an appraising look appreciating his display of manners and directness. It has recently come to our attention that the last male member of the Black family has passed away, said Grimjaw in a serious tone. In a previous visit to the bank, he had made a will naming you as his heir and entitling you to the entire Black estate and all its titles. However, Lord Black was aware of the fact that only male members of the Black family may inherit the title. So in anticipation of that, had decided to perform a blood adoption ritual taking you in as his son. He had informed me that he was planning on carrying out the ritual sometime before your 16th birthday. Harry was stunned. Sirius planned on adopting him. On making him his own son. Harry's deepest wish was to have a real father, and to know that Sirius had considered him as his son to the point of making it legal touched a long-dormant part of him. He felt elated, and yet this made Sirius' loss even more profound. Realizing that there was work to be done, he quickly filed his emotions away, and concentrated on the situation. But Sirius died before he could adopt me, he said. That is obvious, drawled Grimjaw. However, your godfather was prepared for just this situation and has left a vial of his blood under a stasis charm. Saying this, Grimjaw took out a large vial that held about a liter of blood. This will be more than enough to carry out the ritual making you his heir by blood and magic. Lord Black, however, had instructed me to inform you that it is your decision whether or not you wish to carry out the ritual. To Harry, there was only one answer to that question. Yes, I will do it, he said. Good, but be warned, the ritual will be a long and painful process. Depending on the situation, it may take a day to complete. Harry thought for a while and said, How complex is this ritual? I want to know because I need to be in Hogwarts before nightfall and was wondering if I can do the ritual myself. Ragnarok hesitated and said, Mr. Potter, blood rituals are strictly regulated in Britain. While the blood adoption ritual is not exactly banned, it is a risky business legally speaking. However, Gringotts is goblin territory and that law is not observed. But should you do this outside, and be discovered, there may be severe repercussions, and you may not be recognized as a legitimate heir. Harry thought for a while and then said, what if Gringotts officially states for the record that the ritual happened in here? Then in the eyes of the Ministry, the ritual would be legal. The goblins looked at each other and after a brief conversation in rapid gobbledygook, turned back to Harry. Grimjaw said, well, you still won't be able to perform the ritual on your own as some of the parts require outside assistance. However, as you are pressed for time, perhaps we can come to Hogwarts and set it up. And you do not need to worry about us being detected, we have our methods of remaining undetected. Harry thought on that for a while and said, very well, I will contact you soon and we can set up an appointment. Harry thanked them and made his leave with Gornick escorting him. They had nearly reached the end of the corridor when Gornick remarked casually, you know Mr. Potter, there is an interesting person at the end of Knockturn Alley who is very talented. Many purebloods go to his shop to avail his services, something that might interest a person in your current position. Thank you, I will be sure to visit him, said Harry after a pause. I never told you to visit him, after all, what he does isn't legal. No, I just said that there was an interesting man who goes by the name of Alberich at the end of Knockturn Alley and that if hypothetically, anyone who wanted to meet him, they should knock on the door 3 times and show him this ring. He held up a ring, not that you would be interested. Oh well, might as well dispose of it, I have no use for it. With that he casually tossed the ring over his shoulder where it landed on the floor near Harry's feet. Now when you go outside, be sure to talk to Snarktooth. He will have your new keys and 2 debit cards calibrated to your vaults. The card will be valid in the Muggle world as well, and the one tuned to your family vault has a limit of 10,000 galleons per month till you turn 17. Well, Mr. Potter, I will now take my leave, I trust that you can make it out on your own. Seeing Harry nod, Gornick turned around and left for his office. Harry picked up the ring and put it in his pocket with a grin. Moving out, he went to Snarktooth, who gave him his new keys and cards. Pocketing these, Harry left the bank. Stepping outside, he noticed with surprise that it was still an hour or so before noon. He supposed that the goblins may have used a time distortion charm or something in their offices. It seemed plausible as they were the sort who would squeeze their money's worth from every second they could get. Either that or it might have been the amount of information that he had to process in a short time. Following Gornook's advice, Harry made his way to Knockturn Alley. Raising the hood of his cloak, he started walking in long confident strides, avoiding eye contact with the other denizens of the street, focused on his destination. It would not do to appear to be lost or vulnerable after all. Near the end, Harry spotted a door with an elaborate carving of a woman seducing a horde of demons at her feet and holding an amphora. Knocking thrice caused the woman's eyes to move and look at him. Unnerved, Harry held up the ring. The woman's eyes flashed once before the door opened. Entering, Harry saw a small shop filled with odd trinkets and baubles. At the counter sat a man with flowing blonde hair and deep blue eyes. Harry nervously swallowed and gathering his courage said, Alberich, I presume. I was told that you would be able to help me. The man raised an eyebrow and said in a deep melodious voice, it depends on the type of help one is looking for. If you happen to be an individual who wants to hide from people, then, yes, I can help. What can you do? Asked Harry curiously. I mainly specialize in stealth and anonymity. The charms I know are unique and an invention of mine so cannot be duplicated, detected or broken. They are specifically targeted towards Ministry censors, and as such the Ministry will not be able to find my clients should they, say, use magic in a non-magical environment, for example, said Alberich. And if the customer happens to be underage, I can also help remove the trace without the Ministry knowing a thing. He added with a knowing look on his face. I also can analyze a person's magic and possibly take care of any problems within, all for a price of course. Harry now understood the secrecy behind meeting this man. He was sure that the Ministry was oblivious to this man's existence along with the most of the wizarding population. With the obvious exception of a few purebloods, and other wizards possibly assassins who, Harry was sure, had used this man's services to avoid detection. I would like to have the trace removed, and would also like my magic masked so that it cannot be detected. And, if you can manage it, I would like something that would help me blend in but not make me truly invisible. I am tired of having people stare at me, and at the same time have no desire in avoiding bumping into them. And if you could do that diagnosis thing of yours, I would appreciate that as well. Very well, said Albrecht after a pause. Pulling out his wand, he began to mutter a long string of a language Harry did not understand. Lowering his wand, the man frowned and said, I cannot remove the trace. Great, Harry thought with trepidation and a little resignation. Barely anything could go right with him, why not? He asked nervously. That is because the trace is no longer on your person, said Albrecht thoughtfully. Did you have it removed by someone else? He asked suspiciously. No, said Harry. Albrecht studied Harry for a while and then said, let me see if I can get to the bottom of this. His eyes then started glowing as he stared at Harry intently. After a minute or two, just as Harry was becoming uncomfortable with all the staring, Albrecht closed his eyes and said, interesting. What is? Asked Harry nervously. It seems that your core has undergone a massive overhaul and has practically been reset, said Albrecht opening his eyes. I sense some recent changes, nothing bad, he added looking at Harry's worried face. Basically any foreign magic placed on you has been obliterated by your magic. Not only has the trace been removed but an advanced tracking charm as well, and something that vaguely looks like a hole has been plugged. I am not too sure of that, as whatever it was that the hole led to no longer exists. It is centered around your scar though, he said vaguely, looking at Harry's forehead. I have also noticed that it has undergone a massive expansion, and if I am not mistaken your core will be growing a bit more by the time you reach your mid-20s. You are a rather powerful wizard, and possibly maybe the most powerful one of your generation. He paused for a while considering Harry, and then said, have you undergone any great magical stress recently? Trying not to think too much of the events of the past night, Harry said, yeah, I did fight off a possession shortly after a battle for my life against superior numbers, and then, he continued with a little embarrassment, I fainted a little while later because I had released a large amount of magic as the events caught up with me. Noticing the look of slight disbelief on the man's face, he snapped, read tomorrow's prophet, you'll figure it out. Holding his hands out in a gesture of peace, the man said, I believe you, Mr. Potter, though you must admit, that isn't something you hear every day. Harry snorted, no it isn't, he said wryly, not bothering to ask how the man knew his name. At any rate, the good news is that the trace is no longer on you and there is nothing wrong with your core. Now I can still do the other things you asked of me, if you wish. Upon receiving Harry's nod, the man then showed Harry a few chains and necklaces. Harry picked out a thick linked silver chain. Upon giving it a closer look he noticed small diamonds placed discreetly within the links in the clasp. Satisfied, he handed it over to the proprietor. The man held the chain in his hands and closed his eyes, causing the chain to glow white for a second. Handing it back to Harry, he said, this will keep you from being noticed should you choose it. Harry nodded his thanks and put on the chain, which fit snugly around his neck. Harry fingered it for a while, getting used to feeling the cool metal against his skin. There are limitations to this, however. While you will be unnoticed by those around you, you will not be truly invisible. So if you do something that is highly suspicious or impressive, the charm will be rendered useless. Though it will come back into effect the minute you become incognito. Also, if a person who was specifically looking for you were to see you, you will have but a few minutes before they break the charm. But avoiding eye contact and possibly covering your face may keep you undetected. Pausing for a while to let his customer digest this, he continued, you can however, still use magic and be unnoticed, as long as you are discreet about it and are not seen doing it blatantly. People will look at you but will not give you a second thought when the charm is in effect. Apparating out in front of a person will not break the charm as long as it is done quietly. The same goes for apparating in on a busy crowd. The man then picked up a similar bracelet, enchanted it and said, this will ensure that tracking charms cannot be placed on you without your consent. It will also block the ministry's sensors from picking up your magic. This will be on as long as you are wearing the bracelet, so you won't have to think about activating it. Harry put this on his right wrist. When the coolness wears off, they will be fully charged and attuned to your magical signature and can only be used and removed by you, said Albrecht. Harry thanked the man and left, around 500 galleons poorer, but extremely satisfied. He idly wondered why Albrecht wasn't too suspicious about him entering his shop. Surely, a ring couldn't be the only identifying factor. Especially since what he was doing was illegal. Shrugging, Harry moved on. Perhaps there was a faux glass or something in the back room, or the door was warded, he mused. At any rate, he didn't really care, it was that man's headache as far as he was concerned. With that, Harry made his way to Diagon Alley, making a mental note to thank Gornick for his recommendation. Exiting Nocturne Alley, Harry immediately set off towards the Muggle world. The first thing on his mind was to get decent clothes. He wasn't sure how long the magically conjured clothes would last and did not want to suddenly find himself starkers in the middle of a busy street when they suddenly disappeared. He could already see the headlines that scene would cause: "Boy who lived, becomes boy who streaked," or "Harry Potter shows his magic wand," though "the boy who lied bears" all sounded like another possibility. Shuddering, was it his imagination or were his clothes feeling lighter? He made for the leaky cauldron in the Muggle world. The fact that his cloak disappeared the minute he removed it only served to lengthen his strides. Harry hurried down Charing Cross Road towards the underground at Tottenham Court Road, where he had first gotten off with Hagrid. Certain that there was a clothes shop near there. However, on reaching the station, he noticed with dismay that the clothes shop was now taken over by a music store. Cursing his luck and trying not to panic, Harry furiously thought of a plan. He looked down the street and noticed an array of shops. Perhaps he could walk down and find something. Though, after passing a few cafes, a McDonald's, a pub which did a marvelous job of reminding him that he was hungry, Harry's anxiety started to increase. Sure, there were a few stores that sold clothes, but from what Harry could see from the outside, they looked rather girly. He briefly considered going into the Gap store he had spotted across the road at one point, but one look at the mannequins outside disabused him of that notion. He wasn't that desperate, yet. Harry took a few deep breaths at this, trying to calm his thoughts. He cast his mind back 6 odd years trying to remember what that shop looked like. Suddenly, the store's name came to mind. Focusing on what the sign looked like, Harry felt confident that he could apparate there directly. Looking around at the busy street, he concentrated on becoming unnoticed. A shiver of magic ran down his neck, signaling that the charm had activated. The sudden decrease in the stares he was beginning to attract confirmed that theory. Closing his eyes, and praying that it would work, Harry silently disappeared. Opening his eyes, he found himself in front of a Debenhams. Looking around, he noticed that nobody had given him a second glance. Spotting a Muggle surveillance camera, he tensed up a bit before relaxing. He was certain that the charm would prevent Muggle cameras from noticing him while active. Harry entered the store, and quickly made his way to the men's section, where he'd picked up a few random t-shirts and jeans that caught his fancy, and after some consideration, a pair of boxer shorts, barely giving a second glance to the designer labels on them. Trying them on, he then paid for what he liked. After dropping the charm, and ducked back into the nearest trial room, where after removing the underpants from its packaging he changed into his new clothes. And not a moment too soon as the conjured clothes along with his trainers disappeared, leaving his old glasses on the floor. Sighing in relief, he pocketed his glasses, idly noticing without much surprise that the ring was now missing, and walked out of the trial room. He may have been barefoot, and the pair of black boxer shorts he had just bought may have outlines of aeroplanes in green on them, but at least his feet were the only part of him exposed. Well, that and the underwear, his new jeans were low-waist and by a miracle of gravity were still on his hips, leaving his bum almost fully exposed. But Harry didn't mind, he rather liked his new clothes and actually felt comfortable. The t-shirt was also long enough to cover his underwear, so he didn't feel too exposed. Besides, judging by what he had seen so far, it seemed that displaying your pants for the world to see was completely acceptable. Though he made a mental note to get a belt, as he pulled up his slipping trousers for what felt like the nth time, after getting a pair of trainers of course. With that in mind, he headed to the footwear section. Attracting the attention of a salesman, he got his feet measured, and found to his surprise that he was now a size 12. Looking around, he found a nice pair of black trainers adorned with what looked like white graffiti on the sides and a big DC at the back in his size. After trying them out, he indicated that he would like to wear them out. The salesman smiled and said, "Sure thing, sir, I'll just pack your old shoes in then, shall I?" Looking around, he asked confusedly, "Where are your shoes anyway?" After a bit of an awkward pause, Harry had a brainwave. Hoping this would work, he tried to bring his magic out by projecting an air of complete confidence and authority and said, "You don't need to look for my old trainers." Harry was rewarded with success when he saw the salesman's face go blank as he repeated what Harry had said in a monotone. Pleased, Harry then continued saying, adding in a hand gesture he thought appropriate for good measure, "You already have packed in my old trainers and will be selling these new ones free of charge by paying for them out of your paycheck. And then, you will forget all about this incident." Immediately, the man gave him the empty box with the spare pair of laces and said, "Here you go, free of charge," in a monotone, before wandering off, leaving a smirking Harry behind. After paying for a few pairs of socks, and a wide leather belt with a big fancy buckle, Harry felt like a new man with his jeans firmly secured. Relaxing a bit, he browsed the store for a bit and basically bought himself a few more clothes. After all, he did like wearing new clothes of his own and he also had enough money to buy them. The fact that they were all designer labels, and judging by the price tags on them, the height of fashion and would thus make Dudley really jealous was icing on the cake for Harry. Harry also tested out and bought a few bottles of expensive perfume that caught his fancy. After all, why not smell good when you can more than afford it? After spending close to £1,000, and discreetly shrinking the bags and placing them in his pocket, Harry walked out in search of a place to eat. Spotting a Nando's nearby, he made his way over there. He had always wanted to try the food there after hearing his fat cousin rave about it once. Belly full of some really spicy chicken and excellent red wine that he had literally charmed the pretty waitress into selling him without asking questions, Harry activated the charms around his necklace an hour later and apparated back to Diagon Alley. Wasting no time, he quickly selected a few books on dueling, charms, defense, and transfiguration from Flourish and Blots, and after some browsing, a book on stealth and eavesdropping. On his way to the till, he noticed a certain book he had coveted for nearly 5 years but hadn't seen the point in buying. Now, however, considering the changes that had occurred to him in the past few hours, Harry added the book to his sizable pile, grinning maliciously. Dudley was sure going to have an interesting summer this year. Shrinking his purchases and noticing that it was nearly 5, Harry quickly apparated to Hogsmeade, and made his way to Hogwarts, blending in with the mass of students making their way back by making use of his necklace, satisfied with the progress he had made so far, yet knowing that there was more work to be done. As Harry entered the grounds, he thought about what the goblins had said about Sirius Will and the chance he had given Harry of being considered his son by blood. He already knew that he was going through with the adoption, as it cemented in his mind that he was actually wanted by someone in that way. Harry never really had anyone caring for him while growing up. While he stayed with his aunt, she never did show that she cared for him. In fact, he was sure that she and her family hated him and his very existence with a passion. They had gone out of their way to ensure that he never felt accepted or was a part of their household when he was growing up with them, except as the domestic help, though, "beep" would be a more accurate term. He never did remember his parents since they had died when he was really young. While he knew that they loved him, it wasn't the same as the actual experience. Mrs. Weasley had filled that gap somewhat, but she was his best mate's mother, and frankly domineering. She did not seem to understand that Harry was different from her children. In fact, she did not seem to understand Harry at all. In short, Harry had grown up not understanding the feeling of belonging or being wanted. So it was a foregone conclusion that he would jump at the chance to feel that even for a moment. Never mind that his stepfather was already dead. What mattered was that someone wanted him as his son and was willing to acknowledge it. But the million-galleon question was, how fast could it be done? Harry wanted it done as fast as possible, and he also did not want anybody to know until after the fact. So with that in mind, Harry decided that it should be done tonight in Hogwarts. The Ministry was in uproar because Fudge had finally seen that Harry and Dumbledore had been telling the truth, so whatever happened today would in all probability not be noticed. Fudge, also in his blind panic, had done the one thing he was reputed for doing ever since he was elected, gone running to Dumbledore hoping for an easy fix. That meant that Dumbledore would be busy, and since Fudge would want him at hand, the headmaster would not be at school till perhaps next morning. That would mean that Dumbledore would be distracted as well. Therefore, tonight would be the best time to carry that ritual out. With that in mind, Harry started climbing the stairs towards Gryffindor Tower. He would first stow his purchases away in his trunk, especially that bottle of wine, before going to the Ollery and sending Hedwig to Gornick and seeing if it was possible to set the ritual up later that night in Hogwarts. However, as he had stashed his purchases in his trunk, he realized that it was getting rather late. He doubted that he would be able to send an owl in time to Gornik. He wasn't sure if Gringotts had a closing time. Then as he noticed a crumpled bit of parchment on the floor, it hit him, what better way to get a letter faster than by house elf? Congratulating himself on his idea, Harry took his writing things out and penned a short note inquiring about the possibility of a meeting tonight to Gornik. But just before he could call Dobby, he was interrupted by Seamus and Dean, who entered the dorm noisily. Harry cursed silently. He didn't have the time to wait for them to leave, nor could he just call Dobby in front of them. He was a bit paranoid right now and did not want even an inkling of what he was about to do to come out. So after answering a few cursory questions, Harry hurried out of the dorm, not particularly caring if he was being rude. He still hadn't fully forgiven Seamus. Climbing out of the portrait, he set off at a brisk walk towards the room of requirement. Reaching the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, he checked he was alone before calling out for Dobby. With a crack the house elf appeared. "Harry Potter, sir," called Dobby. "What can Dobby be doing for sir?" said the overexcited house elf. Harry smiled at Dobby briefly before getting down to business. "Dobby, can you do something for me and not tell anybody about it?" Dobby looked even more excited by the prospect of helping Harry out than normal. The result of that was rather disturbing. If Harry didn't know better, he was sure that the house elf would spontaneously combust in excitement. Nodding rather vigorously, Dobby said, "Oh yes sir. Dobby is being glad to help out Harry Potter. Dobby will keep Harry Potter's secrets, he will, oh yes." Before the house elf could start waxing lyrical about Harry's greatness and kindness, Harry hurriedly cut him off. That's great Dobby, I want you to just give this letter to Gornik in Gringotts, he is my account manager." With that, he took out the letter he had written and held it out to Dobby. Dobby's large eyes became positively luminous at the prospect of being a courier for Harry. Positively vibrating in place with excitement, he took the letter and babbled, "Dobby will get this letter to Harry Potter's account manager immediately. I expect that Gornik will be replying, so could you wait for it?" At this Dobby began to tear up. Harry Potter is asking Dobby if Dobby is wanting to do something for him. Harry Potter sir is too kind and great, treating Dobby as an equal. "Don't worry sir, Dobby will be sending letter to Harry Potter sir's goblin and will be waiting for reply." With that Dobby popped out with the letter. Harry chuckled. Talking to Dobby was always an uplifting experience. He wondered what Gornik would think at being called Harry Potter's goblin. The goblin might in all probability attack the elf with his bare hands. Harry doubted that he would need a weapon, those nails and teeth looked lethal enough. Harry wasn't too worried. He was pretty sure that Dobby could take care of himself, judging by what he had done to Lucius Malfoy all those years back. He wondered who would win in a fight. Erasing his current thoughts of gladiatorial tournaments between house elf and goblin, Harry cleared his mind and paced in front of the room, picturing an office. Entering, he noted the large comfortable room with large windows in front of him, letting in the late evening summer sun onto a large mahogany desk situated in front of it. Behind the desk was one of those high-backed leather swivel chairs that Harry had seen once before. Sinking into the comfortable chair, Harry let out a groan of pleasure as the chair practically molded itself to him. He had just gotten comfortable when Dobby popped back in holding a scroll of parchment and two folders. Placing these on the desk, Dobby stepped back and asked, "Is there anything else you is needing sir?" Harry stopped spinning the chair upon Dobby's entrance and, slightly dizzy, took the scroll saying, "Not right now thanks Dobby. You are a lifesaver. If there is anything you need, don't hesitate to ask, and if it's within my power I will help you." "Dobby is glad to be helping the good and kind Harry Potter," said Dobby, bowing deeply till his nose was nearly touching the ground. Straightening, Dobby looked a bit apprehensive as if he wanted to ask Harry something. "Is everything all right Dobby?" "Dobby is fine sir. But," Dobby broke off nervously as if dreading Harry's response to what he was about to say, "'tis the other elves sir," Dobby knows not how to say. "Are they giving you trouble Dobby?" Harry said, concerned for the little elf. Despite his hyperactivity and penchant for having potentially lethal ideas for saving his life, Harry had gotten attached to the elf, and could not bear seeing him in trouble. "They aren't hurting you or anything, are they?" "Oh no sir, they is not giving Dobby any trouble sir. They may not be liking that Dobby is getting paying sir, or that Dobby is wearing clothes." But they is not hurting Dobby, they leaves Dobby alone and lets Dobby get on with his work. Oh, then what is the problem? Said a relieved Harry. Frankly, he had no idea what he would have done if the elves had actually been abusing Dobby. Truth to be told, the little buggers could be rather scary. Harry had seen firsthand what an angry elf could do if given incentive and had no desire in being at the receiving end. Thank you very much. Actually, sir, some elves are being in trouble. Dobby is wanting to help them, but is not knowing how, said the elf haltingly. So Dobby is wondering if Harry Potter is being able to help. The elf looked hopeful as he completed his statement. Intrigued, Harry said, "Sure thing, Dobby, I will see what can be done. I will need some time though." He pointed to the folder. "Perhaps I can meet you in the kitchens in an hour or so," he said, hoping that he wasn't about to get in over his head. Dobby is not expecting Harry Potter sir to be helping. Sir is truly kind and good. Dobby will be telling the other elves the good news now. Saying that, the house elf disappeared with a loud crack. Smiling, Harry turned his attention to the scroll. Opening it, he began to read. "Dear Mr. Potter, we recognize the urgency of conducting the ritual and agree that the date and the venue would be ideal in this situation. Ergo, Grimjaw and I will be conducting and witnessing the ritual. Please meet us outside the haunted structure in Hogsmeade at 9 p.m. tonight. Also, I have included the total holdings of both the families that you are shortly going to be head of for you to study at your leisure. Yours faithfully, Gornick." Harry opened the folders to find a list of all the properties that he owned. From the Potter file he noted that aside from one or two small holiday homes found in various exotic locations, along with the house in Godric's Hollow, he owned townhouses in London and Edinburgh as well as the Potter ancestral home, which for all intents and purposes sounded like a small castle located in an unplottable section of Holy Island in Wales surrounded by large tracts of farmland. There was a small magical settlement nearby. It was too small to be called a village, and was named after the Muggle town of Holyhead. Harry also saw that he owned the local Quidditch team and a stadium there too. Other properties were mainly small business premises in Diagon Alley in Hogsmeade, as well as plantations in Africa, Asia and South America, and a dragon reserve in Romania. From the Black family was Black Isle, located at the south of England a few miles off Plymouth. It too had a castle which was slightly larger than the Potter one, surrounded by an even larger farmland, with a decent-sized village nearby. Other properties included a large mansion located in Fairies Glen in Skye as well as Grimmauld Place in London. Aside from that, there were a few vineyards found in France, a few plantations in the Caribbean and what looked like a good portion of Knockturn Alley. Harry also noted that both families had, curiously enough, large tobacco plantations. Harry set aside that for the moment, taking note to ask Gornick about that later. Checking the time with a quick tempus, he noted that it was 5:30. Harry shrunk and pocketed the files and made his way to the kitchens, wondering what was troubling Dobby. As he turned the handle that appeared after tickling the pear in the painting of the fruit bowl, he was greeted by the undivided attention of 5 slightly drunk elves wearing vaguely familiar woolen hats. Looking around, Harry noticed that they were surrounded by the other elves that were looking at him with suspicion and a little fear. "What is going on?" asked Harry, looking at them with trepidation and a bit of bemusement. The 5 elves did look a bit funny tottering around like that. The sober elves muttered to each other before one of them stepped forward and said in a rather accusatory tone, "You is one of them, you is. Tally has seen Youse with her." She shuddered at the last word, causing the other elves to gasp and shrink away from Harry as if he were carrying some disease. "Who?" asked Harry, nonplussed, wondering what was going on. "You know who," wailed Tally. "Voldemort. Why would I be with him? Besides, he's a he, not a she," replied Harry, exasperated. "No, not he who must not be named," said Tally with uncharacteristic impatience after the customary flinching at Voldemort's name. "We house elves is not being so afraid of him no more. Not now that we have met her," said Tally, whispering the last word with venom. "She is more terrible and evil than he who must not be named." "She is the clothes maker," said Tally, looking left and right. The other house elves shuddered as one and started looking around as if afraid that they might be suddenly attacked by some unknown force. Bewildered, Harry found himself looking around as well before he could stop himself. Whoever this person was, she seemed to have terrified the elves even more than Voldemort, especially since they seemed to be afraid of even using the moniker they had given her. He cast his eyes to the elves at the center and noticed that they looked rather woebegone. "What happened to them?" he said, indicating the 5 elves. "They is being affected by her," said Tally, whispering the last word. Harry looked again at those elves. The hats they were wearing looked familiar. "Hang on, are you talking about Hermione?" said Harry incredulously, finally recognizing the elves were wearing Hermione's earliest creations. Upon hearing her name, the elves all clapped their hands over their ears and started shrieking in distress, their high-pitched voices so loud and tiny that they seemed to lance through Harry's ears and pierce his brain, literally bringing him to his knees. All right, calm down. I won't mention her name again," he shouted, struggling to be heard over their frantic voices. "Shut up," he bellowed, throwing his hands up. In his desperation, he caused fireworks to come out of his hand with a blast like a cannon, which finally silenced the hysterical elves. Harry took a moment to look at his hand in wonderment in the ringing silence before addressing the elves. "Okay, now tell me what she has done that you are so afraid of her," said Harry, stopping himself from saying Hermione's name at the last minute when he saw the elves ready to start off again. Dobby took this moment to pop into existence, his colorful clothes contrasting with the whites of the other Hogwarts elves. Finally spotting an elf that seemed to be the most sane at the moment, and that wasn't saying much, a relieved Harry directed his next question to him. "Dobby, what the bloody hell is going on here?" he said, gesturing at the other elves. Dobby looked around and came closer to Harry, causing Harry to crouch to his level. He said in a low voice that would not be heard by the elves surrounding them, "It's Harry Potter's Rangy, sir. She has been upsetting the other elves by giving them clothes." "Hang on, I thought that the situation was resolved already at the beginning." "You see, sir," began Dobby nervously, "they is no longer being Hogwarts house elves since Harry Potter's Rangy freed them." "Wait, how is Hermione giving them clothes freeing them?" "I mean, you guys do the students' laundry as well," said Harry. "Oh no, sir, house elves can pick up dirty clothes left around. They can only be freed when their master personally hands them clothes. Mrs. Rangy made clothes for elves and left them under rubbish for them to find as a gift. This made the elves free when they picked them up, sir." "Oh," said Harry, slowly cottoning on. "So what you are saying is that to free an elf, you need to gift or personally hand them clothes." Seeing Dobby nod, he continued, "So why don't they leave and find another place to work?" "Well, sir, they is still being bound to the castle even if they is being freed from service, sir. Unless they find another master, they cannot leave the castle without permission from the headmaster," said Dobby. "And Headmaster Dumbledore was being too busy to talk to us house elves, sir," he continued, looking slightly crestfallen. Harry understood what they were feeling all too well. Besides, it wasn't as if Umbridge would deign to listen to them either. Suddenly seeing where this was going, he said, "Is this what you wanted me to help you with, Dobby?" Dobby looked up at him hopefully. "Dobby is hoping that the great Harry Potter could talk to Professor Dumbledore and help them, sir," he said, waving his hand at the 5 elves. Harry really had no desire of speaking to Dumbledore again, especially not so soon. Thinking a bit, he said, "The elves are bound to the school till they find a master and cannot leave the castle to find one as they haven't been given permission by the headmaster." "Yes, Harry Potter, sir," said Dobby, nodding. "But what if they find a master without leaving the castle, will they no longer be bound to the castle?" Upon receiving another nod from Dobby, Harry asked curiously, "Why do they need a master anyway, Dobby?" "House elves like being bound to wizards and working for them, sir," interjected Tally, who until then had been pretending that she hadn't been eavesdropping into the conversation. "We likes to serve. Besides, wizard magic makes us stronger." "Not that she understands," she added, the waspish tone sounding out of place on her small body. She muttered to herself, much to Harry's amusement. Tally tried to make her understand, but she never listens. "I may have a solution for them then." Harry stood up to address the other elves, looking on curiously in general and the 5 house elves in particular. "It has been brought to my notice that you 5 elves have been freed from service by the tyrannical clothes maker." He paused as they winced, "and are looking for new masters to work for. Well, I am going to be inheriting new homes soon and will need elves to keep them habitable and carry out repairs. Will you be willing to work for me?" Harry reckoned that he would need some elves to help with the upkeep of his properties, as he didn't know how many he had. Besides, house elves were dead useful and he was not about to pass up the chance to have 5 of them. Harry suddenly found his legs being attacked by 5 very grateful, and still drunk, elves who were breaking into paroxysms of joy and expressing their undying gratitude while their employed colleagues had either burst into happy tears or were joyfully dancing and praising the great and generous Harry Potter. Perhaps the glass of wine that he had earlier at lunch was stronger than what he was used to, or perhaps Harry was still high over the illicit nature of the trip that he had taken and what he had done and was about to do under Dumbledore's and the Ministry's nose. But whatever it was, Harry found himself actually enjoying having the elves heap praises on him and reveling in the attention being given to him, whereas he would have normally blushed with embarrassment in the past. Amidst all this celebration, Harry noticed that Dobby seemed to be a bit unhappy. It didn't take much of a genius to figure out what the matter was with him. "Do you want to work for me as well, Dobby?" At this, Dobby's expression changed to one of incredulous joy. Dobby would be honored to be working for the great Harry Potter. Dobby has also been wanting to be Harry Potter's elf for ages. "Very well, how much would you want as a salary?" Dobby is not wanting paying anymore, not that he is now working for the good and kind Harry Potter, sir. Surprised at this, Harry crouched down to Dobby's level again. "What about being free and earning wages? I thought that it was what you really wanted." Harry's voice trailed off at the end questioningly. Dobby enjoyed being a free elf for a while, but Dobby has grown tired of it. Dobby is now ready to settle down with a nice family, said Dobby gravely. "Well, Dobby, were you anybody else, I probably would have taken that the wrong way. But since it's you, welcome to the family," said Harry, gesturing grandly. Dobby was the icing on the cake. Harry somehow found that he liked the elf. He really was a great ego booster, what with the way he kept going on and on about how great Harry was. Harry supposed that he could keep Dobby as his personal house elf. Harry shook himself out of those thoughts and addressed all 6 of his soon-to-be house elves. "I will come down tomorrow and we can set up the bonding ceremony then. It will give you a chance to clean up and stuff. Now, I am feeling a bit peckish, so dinner would be nice." As he said this, his stomach growled loudly. At once the elves got busy, and before he could blink, Harry found himself seated at a table with a large spread of all his favorites. Harry dug in, feeling ravenously hungry despite the large lunch that he had partaken in. He was barely able to stagger out of the kitchens later on due to the amount of food he had eaten. The elves had definitely gone all out to show their gratitude for saving them and their way of life. They had even given him a large helping of the best treacle tart he had ever tasted. Feeling good about himself, Harry checked the time at the nearest available magical clock. He really needed to get a wristwatch for himself, and found that it was nearing 9. Cursing, Harry bolted towards the grounds, putting on his invisibility cloak that he had the foresight to take with him and wrapping it around himself. He also activated the charms around his necklace as an added precaution. However, he did not encounter anybody on his way outside. He slipped out through the main doors and out into the dying rays of sunlight. Making his way to the Whomping Willow, he froze the tree by prodding the knot and slipped inside. Emerging out in the Shrieking Shack, Harry removed his cloak and made his way outside to the front of the house. Coming outside, he spied the 2 goblins who had just arrived with a flash of light. "Good evening, Gornick, Grimjaw," said Harry, approaching the 2 goblins. "Shall we get on with it then?" "Indeed, Mr. Potter, lead the way," said Gornick. Harry led them back into the shack to their well-hidden surprise. Pressing the knot on the tree, he led the 2 out into the Hogwarts grounds. Grimjaw said doubtfully, "I hope you have a suitable place set up for the ritual, Mr. Potter. This ritual is complex after all." Harry just smirked and said, "Follow me, just ensure that you are not seen." With that, he slipped the cloak on. Before they moved on, Gornick said, "May I cast a tracking charm on you, Mr. Potter?" "I presume that I would need your permission," he said leadingly. "After all, we won't be able to see each other since we will be invisible." Unseen by the goblins, Harry nodded. He hadn't thought of that and was glad somebody had. "Go ahead," he said, feeling a tingle of magic emanating from his wrist indicating his consent. Gornick waved his hand and paused, a troubled expression on his face. Seeing this, Harry uncovered his head and said, "Is something the matter?" Frowning, Gornick said, "I tried to place the tracking charm on you, but it has failed for some reason. Are you sure that any tracking charms I cast can be placed on you?" Nodding, Harry said, "I felt the magic signaling the device's acceptance of my instructions." Gornik tried casting the charm again. Interesting, it works now that you have uncovered your head. I think that the cloak has been blocking any spells that I cast on you. If that indeed is the case and that cloak is indeed what I think it is, then I suggest that you keep that cloak safe. Its value has gone up considerably. Harry nodded and covered his head while the goblins placed disillusionment charms on themselves. The invisible party then headed towards the castle. Harry then proceeded to lead them up towards the 7th floor. The two goblins looked at their surroundings with expressions of open interest. Not that Harry could see that. Harry stopped at the tapestry and removed his cloak, causing the goblins to drop their charms as well. This area is a bit small for the ritual, Mr. Potter, said Grimjaw in a skeptical tone. Instead of answering, Harry just paced in front of the wall. Just as they were beginning to get concerned about his mental health, a door appeared in front of the goblins out of nowhere to their shock. Smirking at the reactions he had incited in the normally collected creatures, Harry opened the room and said dryly, "Will this be enough, gentlemen?" Gobsmacked, the goblins numbly stepped through the door and saw a high-ceilinged room with two concentric runic circles with a large but shallow circular basin in the middle made of what the goblins found to be a highly magical and rare form of platinum. Recovering quickly from their shock, the goblins turned to Harry and nodded. "This room more than suits our purposes, Mr. Potter. In fact, loath as I am to admit this, it is even better than the ritual room that we use in Gringotts," said Grimjaw, "and we spent billions of galleons and 2 years' worth of labor to get ours done," he muttered to himself. "It seems that Mr. Potter has managed to escape from incurring extra expenses," said Gornik in a slightly disappointed tone. "In fact, it's Gringotts who would end up paying to use this room. A lot of goblins would kill just to be able to see this room," he continued in awe. Realizing that Harry had heard what he had just said, both the goblins shut their mouths with an audible snap. Harry just grinned and said, "It looks like the both of us benefit from this venture then. Your discretion and time for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to use the best ritual room you have ever seen for free. The bragging rights you will have with the other goblins can be considered an added bonus. It looks like you have the makings of a fine businessman, Mr. Potter," said Grimjaw sardonically. "You will make for an interesting client." Then the goblins quickly got down to business. Grimjaw took out the vial of blood he had shown Harry earlier, while Gornik took out a piece of parchment and gave to Harry to sign, saying, "This shows that the ritual has been conducted and that you are fully aware of its consequences and are willingly taking part in it. We will be taking care of the location later on," Gornik finished with a smirk. After Harry signed, Grimjaw spoke in a businesslike tone. "Very well, Mr. Potter, as you are the main subject of this ritual, you will have to enter the circle just as yourself. That means no possessions on your body, including clothes," he ended with a smirk. Blushing, Harry removed the necklace and bracelet before stripping down to his newly bought pants with the aeroplane outlines on them. The jeans fell down to his ankles almost immediately when he unbuckled his belt. He tried to act natural and ignore Gornik's amused expression as he watched Grimjaw remove the stopper and poured half the contents of the vial of serious blood into the basin, chanting under his breath in a strange language. Harry noted that the vial definitely contained more than a liter of blood. As Grimjaw finished, Harry slowly lowered his pants and at Grimjaw's signal lay down spread-eagled, partially submerged in the blood, trying not to choke on the smell or think of whom the blood once belonged to. Grimjaw then proceeded to draw strange runes all over Harry's body with the remaining blood, all the while chanting softly in a guttural language. He had some difficulty at the ribs and feet. Harry was rather ticklish there, and at the crotch. Harry was male and 15, but it was nothing he couldn't handle. Gornik then said, "We are now conducting a ritual to adopt Harry James Potter into the House of Black. He is to be adopted by the previous heir of House Black, Sirius Black, and will inherit the headship of the Black name and will be considered a full member of the family. After this ritual he shall be known as Harry James Potter Black." With this, Grimjaw started to trace the other runes in the two concentric circles with the last of the blood. Finishing, the two goblins started to chant a bit louder. Magic started building as the goblins finished chanting, forming a dome around Harry. Seeing this, the goblins slipped out of the room, Gornik leaving a note on Harry's clothes. They had played their part, now everything was left to Harry. As the magic grew, Harry initially felt the blood in the runes painted on his body evaporate. He noticed that the red color had changed to a deep luminous blue, which he supposed was magic. He then felt the blood beneath him slowly creep up to cover his body while at the same time feeling a stinging pain across his front as he saw his own blood leak out of an pool around the runes drawn mixing with Sirius blood. As this was happening, Harry thought of Sirius and the times they had spent together. He tried to distract himself from feeling the pain by focusing on his feelings for Sirius. As Harry's heart filled with emotion for the second time in a day, the dome of magic above him gained a golden hue, as the effects of the ritual became enhanced by the love Harry felt towards Sirius. This was something rarely seen and made the filial bond between Harry and Sirius even stronger, something that would be seen much later when Harry would do an inheritance test at Gringotts. As Harry slowly lost consciousness, the blood in the basin was absorbed into his body. As the last drop disappeared into his body, the ritual came to its full conclusion. The runic circles disappeared and the room became barren, leaving only the unmarked nude body of a peacefully sleeping wizard formerly known as Harry Potter and his things. Harry woke up the next morning feeling refreshed. Looking at his state of undress reminded him of his ritual. Wanting to see what he looked like, he thought of a mirror. As one appeared, he stepped up to it and studied his body closely. He hadn't paid special attention to his reflection the day before when he had gone shopping since he was in a hurry to get clothes, which is why he was surprised to find quite a few changes on his body. Beyond the glaringly obvious improvement in his height and eyesight, the slight musculature he had acquired through years of physical activity had improved slightly, gaining some definition. He was pretty happy with the six-pack he was now sporting. All the scars on his body, and they were numerous, had also disappeared, the only exceptions being the scar left from the basilisk fang, which had faded somewhat, though he wasn't too unhappy with that. It was a souvenir of an epic battle with a basilisk after all, which he had won by the way, and he was more than pleased that the marks on the back of his hand, a byproduct of the numerous detentions with that sadistic toad Umbridge, had completely disappeared, leaving unmarked skin. Bolstered by this, Harry eagerly lifted his fringe to see if his lightning bolt scar had gone as well. He was disappointed to know that the scar still remained, though it no longer looked inflamed. In fact, it had thinned out and faded somewhat, looking very much like a regular scar. Other than that, Harry was puzzled that there wasn't much in the way of physical changes. He expected that the adoption ritual would have done something like that, but his eyes were still the same shade of green, his hair still jet black and unruly, and his nose the same shape. Turning around, Harry went to get dressed. As he pulled on his clothes, he saw a piece of parchment fall out. Picking it up, he opened it to read. Dear Mr. Potter, by the time you were reading this, the ritual would have reached its completion. If the ritual has succeeded, and I am sure it would have, then you should have woken up to find no trace of the blood used on your person or in the surroundings. The runes drawn on you should fade within a few days, after which the physical changes will take place. Within a month or so, you will start to notice some of the physical characteristics of your adoptive parent. They will be slight, but noticeable if you know where to look. After this, you may start to exhibit some of the other traits found in the Black family. Those will be further discussed when you later come to Gringotts. Thus, Grimjaw and I have come to the conclusion that you should visit us on the eve of your 16th birthday for your heritage test and to legally record your name as Harry James Potter Black, or any other name of your choosing. As Gringotts will be open 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, you can be assured that you will find entry into our establishment should you choose to come in at an odd time. Though a word of caution, some of our nightly customers are usually those who are active at such times to avoid detection, if you know what I mean. It would be in your best interest to come in disguised. You would not look out of place with a hooded black cloak. Yours faithfully, Gornick. Well, this explains everything, thought Harry. He was slightly confused that the rune markings had already faded completely. Resolving to ask Gornick about this later, he headed to the dorms for a much-needed bath. After bathing, Harry put on a fresh set of his new clothes. As he was getting dressed, he suddenly noticed his glasses lying in the trunk. He figured that people would notice if he no longer needed his glasses. After all, that would be noticeable, and it wasn't something that Harry could hide or explain away at the moment. His height had increased only by an inch or so and was hidden under the loose clothes that he had specifically chosen so wouldn't be as noticeable as his glasses. Harry mentally cursed himself for not thinking about it. He was lucky that McGonagall hadn't twigged him. He supposed that having just returned from St. Mungo's had helped somewhat. He also had not given Dean and Seamus much of a chance to look at him properly since he was already on his way out when they had come in. Stopping for the moment, Harry took his wand out and vanished the lenses in his glasses. He concentrated and conjured a fresh pair of plain clear lenses with no prescription into the frame. He was gratified to notice that the lenses had materialized properly and easily. Transfiguration hadn't always been a strong suit for him. Harry placed his sort of new glasses on his face, feeling the familiar weight back on his nose, and walked out of the dorms. He noticed that it was late in the morning, meaning that the others would be out in the Great Hall having lunch. Harry also realized with a start that by now everybody would have read the Daily Prophet and by now know the full truth. And more importantly, the fact that he was in the middle of it. He also realized with apprehension that there might be a lot of people wandering about in the castle since it was a Sunday. Harry reckoned that they would not be specifically searching for him and so activated his necklace again and walked out into the common room with trepidation. He was glad to find that nobody paid him any attention. He quickly got moving as he was sure that he would be noticed if he stayed still for too long. Moving out of the portrait hole, he walked leisurely towards the kitchens, reveling in the anonymity that the chain was affording him. As he entered the kitchens, he remembered the promise he had made to 6 elves, as 5 slightly hungover elves and 1 overhyper Dobby all swarmed him within minutes of noticing him. Smiling bemusedly at them, Harry noticed a 7th slightly hungover elf. "Is there something I can help you with, Winky?" he asked the elf. Winky's eyes moistened at Harry asking her that question before saying hopefully, "Winky heard tell that Harry Potter is looking for good house elves, and was going to take Dobby and 5 others. Winky be wondering if Harry Potter wanted another elf as well." She looked at Harry with large hopeful eyes. "Oh lovely, bond 5 get 2 free," thought Harry sardonically before immediately squashing those thoughts. House elves were dead useful after all, and he did have a lot of properties in his name, so the more the merrier as far as he was concerned. "Do you want to be bonded to me?" he asked. Winky immediately brightened up and looking disturbingly like a tomato-shaped nose female version of Dobby said, "Yes. Yes, Harry Potter, sir. I is being the bestest house elf ever I is." She either ignored or didn't notice the disdainful and challenging looks from the other 5 elves and the slightly murderous look in Dobby's eyes. Harry looked at the byplay with interest. It looks like Dobby and Winky won't be getting together anytime soon, unless they are the elfish version of Ron and Hermione. No. Bad image, bad image. Shaking his head of disturbing thoughts of ginger and bushy-headed elves, Harry said as instructed by the elves, "I, Harry James Potter Black, do hereby take the house elves Willy, Nilly, Dilly, Dally, Twinkie, Dobby and Winky into the houses of Black and Potter." So mote it be. He felt a good deal of pleasure upon adding his godfather's surname. As soon as he said this, the 7 elves' motley collection of clothing was replaced by tea-towel togas adorned with a shield divided diagonally with what Harry recognized as the Potter and Black crests adorning the upper left and right sections. Harry didn't trust himself to say anything currently as he was sure that he had sprained a rib or two trying not to laugh at the elves' names. He really wasn't sure how he had managed to say those names together with a straight face. He supposed this was mainly why Amos Diggory avoided enunciating their names as much as possible. There really isn't any way you can say, Winky, and sound stern and commanding at the same time. Harry also noticed that the elves actually looked happier than they had been before. They certainly didn't seem that depressed anymore. Even Dobby looked happier than Harry had seen him before, if that was in any way possible. Harry got down to business. "Right, I don't really have anything for you to do right now. I will call you a little later on and give you your instructions." The elves nodded and disappeared as Harry sat down to eat a large English breakfast. After he had finished, Tally came up to him and asked what Harry planned to do about Hermione and her freeing elves against their own will. Harry said that he would think about it and will have a plan by the beginning of the next academic year. Besides, it's not like she will have the time to do anything for the next few days since she is in the hospital wing, he said. Appeased, Tally and the other elves went back to work in better spirits. Harry supposed that it would be a good time to go and visit his friends in the hospital wing now. He supposed that Ron and Hermione would be awake by now. Though he was concerned for Luna, Neville and Ginny, he wasn't as worried because realistically speaking, they had suffered minor injuries. Though with the way Madame Pomfrey was, Harry supposed that they would only be released today. So with that in mind, Harry set off towards the hospital wing. Upon entering, he saw Neville coming out of the bathroom fully dressed. "All right, mate?" Harry asked tentatively. He didn't know how Neville would be around him. He had led them into a trap after all, which had led to a confrontation with the woman who had driven his parents insane. Harry did recognize that it wasn't his fault that Neville had ended up fighting for his life. He and the others had followed him voluntarily despite Harry's objections and warnings of the dangers. He needn't have to worry as Neville greeted him with a smile on his face. "Hey Harry, it's good to see you again. I hadn't seen you yesterday and I was getting worried." "I'm fine, Neville," said Harry with an airy wave of his hand. "In fact, I've never felt better. I'm sorry I didn't come yesterday, but I had things to deal with and wasn't really in the mood to see Madame Pomfrey," he said a bit haltingly, before adding with a half-smile and a faux cheery tone, "and I was afraid of stepping out and doing anything. It's going to be the first time in my Hogwarts career that I haven't ended up in the hospital wing, and I don't really want to jinx it." "True that," Neville chuckled. "How are you, Neville?" said Harry in a serious tone. Neville had taken a Cruciatus curse and Harry knew that it wasn't a picnic, and factoring in Harry's high tolerance for pain, that was saying something, so he was worried about Neville's reaction as it was his first dose of that particular curse or of any substantial pain after all. "I'm all right," said Neville easily. "Pomfrey fixed my nose in a jiffy. She did dose me with dreamless sleep as well as a pain relief potion though," he added with a wince. "In fact, I only just got discharged." As he said that, the aforementioned nurse materialized. "Mr. Potter, I was wondering when you would be gracing the hospital wing this year." She advanced towards Harry, her wand raised. "What have you got yourself into this time?" Before she could start casting, Harry interrupted her hastily. "It's nothing, honest. I only came to visit my friends." "Where are Ginny and Luna?" He looked around the room searching for them. He spied Ron and Hermione lying on beds not very far away. The kindly matron looked faintly surprised. "Well, that's a first," she muttered. Noticing where he was looking, she said, "Miss Weasley and Miss Lovegood are fine. Nothing a spell and some bed rest couldn't cure. These two, however," she waved in the direction where Ron and Hermione were sleeping, "were a bit tricky. They should be awake in a few moments, in fact." At that, Ginny and Luna emerged from the privacy screens at the end of the room fully clothed. Harry greeted them nervously. While Neville seemed to be fine with things, he had no idea what Ginny and Luna were feeling about being in the Ministry. Ginny was a redhead, and judging by his ginger best friend, Harry reckoned that his sister would be just about as volatile and temperamental as her older brother. And as for Luna, the less said the better. The girl was as predictable and easy to read as Trelawney's tea leaves. Again, Harry found his apprehension to be unfounded as both girls greeted him cheerily, and in Luna's case, dreamily. After assuring each other that they were well, the four sat down around the still sleeping members of their gang. Harry sat down on the bed opposite Ron's while the girls and Neville sat in chairs around. "So what happened to Ron that made him so loopy?" asked Harry. From what he could make out of his friend that wasn't covered by the blankets, Ron's arms were covered in bandages. "Oh, like I said before, we were in this room full of planets where Ron was hit in the back with what I think was a strong confundus charm," said Luna airily as if she was discussing the weather. "I think it was Jugson who hit him," interjected Ginny. "As for the brains, well, according to Madame Pomfrey, they have attacked him with a physical manifestation of thoughts. She reckons that beside the welts, there should be no damage." "Hermione was a bit tricky though," said Neville again. "According to Pomfrey, the cursed Dolohov hit her with caused a lot of damage. She says that it was lucky that he was silenced, otherwise the spell would have been lethal." Harry digested this in. Then looking curiously at Luna he said, "What are you doing here? Were you hurt too?" "I am fine, thank you, Harry," said Luna with a smile. "Madame Pomfrey wanted to make sure of that, so she stuck me in a bed for the day." Harry rolled his eyes at the overprotectiveness of the matron only to quickly smooth his face as the matron came in. At the same time, Ron and Hermione started to come back to awareness. The matron first attended to Hermione. After checking on her, she handed her a bevy of potions to drink. Instructing Neville to ensure that they were all drunk, she turned her attention to Ron. After checking on him and finding nothing wrong with him beyond the welts that he had on his arms, Madame Pomfrey removed the bandages and started applying a large amount of a foul-smelling ointment. Her work done, Madame Pomfrey left for her office. Harry smiled on seeing his two oldest and best friends up and on the road to recovery. An hour later, as he was exiting from the hospital wing, he wasn't smiling anymore. He really should have expected it after all. After reading the Sunday Prophet, Hermione had spent little to no time at all in finding about what had happened after she had lost consciousness, and even lesser time after that hounding Harry about how he felt about the whole thing. Harry did understand that she had just found out about it, but it really wasn't her business. He was thankful that Luna had managed to distract her so that he could make his escape. He wondered if the air of dottiness that she put up was an act. But what really troubled Harry was when he was talking to them, he could somehow read Hermione's thoughts the minute she met his eyes. He didn't really know how that happened, but the galling fact was that she actually seemed smug about being right even though she was trying to hide it. Now confused and bothered, Harry decided to go into the grounds to think. As he walked out into the hot summer sun, he headed to a secluded spot near the lake that he had discovered a while back. He was greeted by many students on the way holding copies of the Sunday Prophet, as if to say that they all believed him all along, or that they had decided that, like the Daily Prophet, that he wasn't a deranged attention-seeking liar after all. Had this happened a few days back, Harry would have been more than happy to finally have everybody believe him and not think of him as a raving lunatic. Now, he could care less. This year had taught him that the public could be very fickle. As Harry sat down behind some bushes looking toward the lake, hidden from view, he started reviewing what he had done so far in the last 2 days. He really couldn't believe that it was that long. That just yesterday early morning he had come back from a fight to the death. That Sirius had died. Harry wiped the tears from his eyes. He couldn't really wrap his head around the fact that Sirius had actually died, and so he had trouble feeling the grief he knew he should be feeling. He suspected that he would have a wonderful breakdown very soon, but it wouldn't be for a while yet. He then thought about the happenings in Diagon Alley and in Muggle London as well. He wondered how he had managed to apparate. He hadn't apparated before at all, that too wandlessly. And speaking of wandless, had he actually managed to quiet the elves by shooting fireworks without a wand? Then again, that wasn't the first time. He didn't have a wand in his hand when he had cast that Lumos last summer when the Dementors had attacked. He distinctly remembered that he wasn't touching his wand at that time. Then there was how calm he was feeling. He had trouble in the past controlling his emotions, so how had he managed to stay in control? Come to think of it, his mind felt rather organized and structured. Something he imagined he would feel if he was a master at occlumency. Harry sifted through his recent memories that to his surprise were catalogued and clear. He also noticed that they were all catalogued from after the possession incident at the ministry. And then it hit him, the vision he had seen while being possessed and the black smoke coming out from his scar. Could it be that he had somehow unknowingly absorbed Voldemort's memories and knowledge? Harry had to test this theory out, so he screwed his face up trying to remember something of Voldemort's memories. But he was disappointed as all he got was a few disjointed fragments. He then tried to see if he could bring up the shield that he had seen Voldemort make during the duel against Dumbledore to see if he had Voldemort's knowledge. Harry could get a vague feeling that he knew the name of the spell that would bring it up, but for the life of him could not remember the incantation. It was like it was on the tip of his tongue, just out of reach. Frustrated, Harry gave up. He couldn't even remember the theory behind apparition or occlumency save knowing how to do each. He supposed he could also do legilimency but would have to test that theory out. He had a feeling that he had invariably done it with Hermione, but that event was too random to be counted. After all, it could have been a figment of his imagination. Harry sighed in defeat and not a little disappointment. He supposed that he would have to build his spell repertoire on his own after all. It really was a shame, but he supposed that getting all of Voldemort's knowledge would have been too easy. He decided to look on the positive side of things. He actually felt light, as if a great burden and strain on his magic had been removed, a strain he had no idea that he was bearing all these years. He also felt a closer connection to his magic. And on top of it, he had never felt so good physically. There was a distinct lack of a sort of tiredness that he had felt all these years without knowing it. Harry then turned his thoughts to the prophecy that Dumbledore had oh so graciously deigned to share with him. He was a marked man, and had been so ever since he was born. He supposed he should feel angry with Trelawney, but he knew that it wasn't her fault. She was only the messenger. It was Voldemort and Dumbledore who had decided that the prophecy had meaning. And speaking of Dumbledore, Harry was angry that Dumbledore hadn't done anything to prepare him for this destiny. Why hadn't he been given some type of training? In his humble opinion, Harry was rather powerful. After all, he had cast a corporeal Patronus at the age of 13. Though come to think of it, he was rather average in his classes. His marks weren't anything great, sure in another world, they would be something to talk about, but they really weren't enough. Harry never had seen the need to apply himself in class. He supposed that it was a habit that he had gained from the Dursleys. They never really liked it when he had performed better than Dudley, so he was forced to underperform to make their oaf of a son look smarter. That had become a habit, Harry realized with a jolt. And his friends hadn't really helped at all. Ron was always slacking off, and Harry supposed with a little jealousy that it was all well and good for him since he didn't have an insane Dark Lord after him. No, Ron would get to live a life that was going to be as stress-free and as normal as possible. And Hermione, while smart and driven to be the best, was too much of a fanatic. So much so that Harry actually dreaded studying with her to the point of not wanting to study much at all. Her methods of studying really did not suit Harry, she depended too much on her textbooks. Though he did listen to her now and then, she did make some good points at times. Well, that was going to change, Harry vowed to himself. He knew that he was smart, and he knew that he loved to learn new things. He just needed to tap that part of him that had been deeply buried within him for such a long time. His survival depended upon it after all. And it wasn't as if the Dursleys were ever going to see or care about his marks anyway. With new resolve, Harry got up and headed inside. He had spells to learn, books to peruse and training to do. And not much time to do them all. It was the day after Ron and Hermione had awakened when Harry entered the hospital wing to find them, as well as Neville, Ginny and Luna, who had decided to visit as well. They were all looking at a bed at the far end of the hospital wing with a look of utmost loathing in their eyes. Harry followed their gaze, and what he saw made his blood boil. Lying peacefully at the other end was Dolores Umbridge. With a supreme effort, Harry managed to rein in his turbulent emotions. He did not want to alert anyone of his feelings. The sight of that evil toad had made Harry see red. He never thought that he would be able to hate anybody more than he hated that woman. She was right up there next to Bellatrix Lestrange and Voldemort. But, Harry thought maliciously, the important difference here was that Harry could actually do something about it. Harry smiled coldly to himself for a brief second before quickly schooling his expression and turning his attention back to the conversation that was occurring around him. "Dunno, she was there this morning when I woke up," said Ron. "How did she get here?" asked Neville with an odd hardness in his tone. "I saw Dumbledore carrying her inside last night when I woke up for a brief while. She hasn't changed her position," said Hermione. "I suspect that she is suffering from shock," she continued. "Wait, Dumbledore brought her in. How did he manage that?" said Harry incredulously. "Well, it is Dumbledore we are talking about in it," said Ron sagely, as if Harry was slightly dim for even thinking of asking that question. "He probably waltzed right in and plucked her off from the centaurs. First and foremost, it isn't it? Honestly, Ron, there is no reason to butcher the English language," said Hermione in a bossy tone. Before she could start off on a rant that would probably degenerate into another patented Ron and Hermione squabble, Neville interjected diplomatically. "I don't expect that the centaurs would have been too happy with Dumbledore over that," he said. He had noticed that irritated look on Harry's face at Ron's sentence and took measures to smooth things over. "I have a feeling that the centaurs would have been pretty reluctant to hand over Umbridge over. I am surprised that they had acquiesced." "Well, he is the headmaster," said Hermione in a self-righteous manner. "They do respect him for that, as they should." With that she looked meaningfully at Harry. Harry knew that she was talking about him breaking things at Dumbledore's office, and his irritation grew. He wasn't sorry about the whole thing, though now he regretted ever telling her about it. He rolled his eyes at her, got up and said shortly, "I have to go, I've got some things I need to do." Nodding at the rest, he ignored Hermione's look of irritation and left the hospital wing, silently vowing not to tell the witch everything anymore. Fuming, he headed up towards the room as he started calling it. He wanted to vent, and learning some new curses was the best way to do so. On his way upstairs, he passed a doorway and froze, his foot still suspended in the air. Backing up, He gave a second look to the sign tacked sloppily on the door reading, "Headmistress," a slow grin forming on his face till it positively looked evil. "And what are we up to, Mr. Potter?" came a voice behind him just as he was about to open the door. "Oh, it's you, Ginny," said Harry when he hurriedly turned around and saw her. "I was, redecorating," he continued after noting the mischievous look in her eyes. At this, Ginny's eyes lit up and became devious. "Oh, is that right?" She sounded eerily like her elder twin brothers. "Want help?" "Not really, but I think there's room enough for the two of us," said Harry accommodatingly. Ginny smiled at him and pulled out her wand. With a grand flourish, Harry opened the door and gestured, "After you, Miss Weasley." Giggling, Ginny entered with Harry following her into the garishly decorated room with a smirk. "I claim the plates on the walls. I especially hated those," he said, surveying the room and eyeing the kittens gambling viciously. He noticed that Umbridge had collected more of the foul things till they dominated 2 of her 4 walls. Ginny pouted cutely, "Ah, I wanted the kittens." She looked up at him hopefully through her fringe. Finally relenting, Harry gestured at the walls and said, "Fine, you take that half and I'll take this half. We'll meet at the center above the mantel where the largest plate is." With that, they moved to the opposite directions. Harry raised his wand at the nearest plate and said with relish, "Reducto." Immediately, the large Technicolor kitten that was looking at him haughtily widened its eyes before diving to the neighboring plate, yowling loudly as the plate it was currently occupying blew up spectacularly. Harry and Ginny both took their time destroying plate after plate, watching as the obnoxious felines within scurried to the next plate. Finally reaching the largest plate at the center, they took a moment to let the dust settle while watching all the cats within crowded up against each other in the largest plate, looking at them in fear. "Bye-bye, kitties," said Harry as he unleashed a final reducto, shattering the plate. Flushed, Harry looked at the rest of the room for his next target. Spotting the lace, he said, "You take the doilies, I'll do the lace." Upon receiving her nod, he began to imaginatively and systematically destroy the furniture in the office while Ginny destroyed the doilies and shredded the dried-up plants within. A few minutes later the two of them stood in the center of the office and surveyed their handiwork. "The room looks rather improved, don't you think, Ginny?" said Harry as he laid his eyes on the burnt armchairs that once had a flowery pattern. "Oh yes, Harry. Personally I think that the black paint that you had splashed on the table linen is a nice improvement," said Ginny, surveying the tar-like substance on the tables. "I hear that black is the new pink anyway, and the smell." She took a great big sniff. "The smell is especially divine. A powerful mixture of burnt animal and wet dog, adding strength and body to the already strong smell of the month-old rotting corpse of a particularly unhygienic mountain troll who had fallen into a pile of 10-day-old dragon dung and died," she continued, affecting a posh accent. They looked at each other for a moment before breaking out into laughter. "That was great, Ginny," said Harry, wiping his eyes. "Where did you learn that charm that sends out all that green gloop anyway?" He eyed the rancid neon green stuff with an expression of fascinated disgust. "It's really foul," he exclaimed, holding his nose. "Fred and George showed me that," replied Ginny easily. "I have wanted to use that for ages." She enthused. "I would love to learn that one." "I don't mind showing you," said Ginny. "It's got the added bonus of being slimy and slippery. Banishing charms won't work on it, and unless you know the correct counter, you will be forced to remove it using Muggle methods. And it tends to stain if you try to remove using Muggle methods." She added with relish. "Wicked," said Harry. "Care to show me now?" "Sure," said Ginny. "The incantation is Caliga and you move your wand like this." She made a sweeping motion with her wand. "Keep sweeping the wand to and fro to get more of the stuff." Harry looked around the ruined, improved in his opinion, office and spied another door. Opening it, he saw that it led into Umbridge's private quarters, which he noted with sadistic relish was even more flowery and full of little knick-knacks than her office. "Caliga!" he shouted, sweeping his wand in a wide arc. Immediately the poisonous green sludge started spewing out of his wand in a torrent. Harry held the spell for a while, ensuring that it soaked the drawers and into Umbridge's clothes as well as her sheets, which he noted were adorned with what only could be her family crest. The irony of the crest being a toad was not lost on him. Ginny looked on, amused at him. "Had fun?" "Definitely," Harry beamed. "That spell was bloody brilliant." "I'll be sure to tell the twins what you thought," said Ginny with a smile. After a moment of silence, she asked in concern, "Are you all right, Harry?" I'm fine, replied Harry automatically. Ginny raised an eyebrow. Okay, not really, he admitted, but I'm getting there. I just need my space and time. I guess that is the best we can hope for, huh? Said Ginny sympathetically. Sirius was a great guy. I've not been around him as long as you have, but spending summer with him was really fun. Yeah, said Harry. Changing the subject, he said, anyway, I have to go. I enjoyed doing this, by the way, he said, gesturing at the office and room. So did I, said Ginny with a smile. The next time you need to decorate the personal quarters of any old hags, you know who to call. Harry smiled and reached for the door. Just as he was about to step out, Ginny called out, wait. I haven't shown you the counter curse yet. Oh, yeah, said Harry, stepping back in. The incantation is a Bayo, and you sweep your wand the other way and add a little flick at the end, said Ginny, demonstrating the wand movement. Harry practiced a bit on a part of the slime in the office. Meeting with success, he reapplied the sludge in greater quantities. Thanking Ginny for the impromptu lesson, he left. While trashing Umbridge's office and ruining her personal effects was satisfying, he wasn't yet done. Besides, Ginny had taken some of his thunder away. He did not begrudge her wanting to join in though. Harry slunk into the room and practiced a few spells from some of his new books. Along with the hair loss curse and flatulence jinx, he had practiced a few fire-based spells as well. His ultimate goal was to master the Fiendfire spell that the book had mentioned in passing. The author had advised that he start out small and then build up from there. Harry found that he could more than easily perform most of the spells. He guessed this was because Voldemort had already mastered them and this muscle memory had transferred to Harry. It was like riding a bicycle after a really long time. You don't really forget the motions, and after a little practice, you are back in form. After practicing most of the curses and spells, Harry found that he could perform them just by thinking about them without needing to articulate them. He understood the tactical advantage this gave a person in a duel. One cannot block a spell when one does not know what it is. Harry noticed that magic was coming easier to him now. Whatever Voldemort had tried to do to Harry that night had benefited him greatly. He could concentrate more, hold his spells longer, and could cast new ones with an ease he hadn't had before. He also felt lighter somehow, as if a great burden he was unaware of had been lifted from his shoulders. In addition to this, Harry had also started to organize his mind. It was subconscious at first and done in his sleep, but Harry had quickly gotten around to understanding the mechanics of the art of occlumency when he started meditating the previous day itself when he had first started training. This had helped him in recalling most of the spells he had learnt in his 5th year more clearly. For some reason, he found himself starting to organize, recall, and catalog his memories backwards. He theorized that remembering yesterday's events helped in recalling the day before and so on till, he hoped, the first few hazy memories he had as an infant. He hoped that he could recall those memories clearly. He really wanted to remember his birth father and mother after all. So far, Harry had nearly reached the beginning of his 5th year winter term. He hoped to be done with 1st year by the beginning of his summer holidays, so had set aside every waking moment he wasn't doing something in mediation. He wanted to remember all his pre-Hogwarts time around the Dursleys. He would be able to vent properly then, and any guilt he felt would probably be minimized to the point of being negligible. From reviewing the memories of that night, Harry had come to the conclusion that Sirius' death truly wasn't his fault. He had acted on the information that he had on hand at that time. Besides, if Sirius had taken Bellatrix seriously, he might still be alive. Harry knew that he had thought similarly before, but this was the first time he had truly accepted it as fact. Harry had also come to another startling revelation that he wasn't too happy about. He realized that the bad publicity he had suffered this past year and in his 4th year had partly been his fault. Had he taken a firmer stance with Rita Skeeter from the beginning, or managed his publicity instead of running and hiding from reporters and being unwilling to speak to them, he might not have been a subject of such ridicule and slander in his 4th and 5th year. He also couldn't truly blame the public for believing the lies the prophet had printed about him, as much as it pained him to admit it. After all, what did they know about him besides what they had read in the papers about him? In fact, come to think of it, not even his best friends knew about the real Harry Potter. They too were enthralled by the feats he had done. And looking back on it, they were pretty impressive. No matter how lucky he had been in those situations. The fact was that he had done things normal people would either fail in or run away from and had lived to tell the tale. All in all, Harry had slowly started accepting his lot in life, starting with his status as a celebrity. It would be some time before he started exploiting it, however. There still were some things he still wasn't comfortable with. Yet, after breaking for lunch, Harry asked the room for a book on rituals that he lost himself in for a while. After a bit more meditating, Harry had his dinner, which he had delivered to him by one of his new house elves. He then spent the rest of the night socializing with Neville before heading to bed. He laid awake waiting for midnight. As the clock chimed 12 times heralding the anticipated hour, Harry took a moment to listen to the snores and soft snuffling that indicated that the other occupants of the dorm were asleep. Satisfied, he got out of bed and slipped on his shoes and his invisibility cloak. As he was about to step out of the door, he noticed Seamus' hand peeking out of his curtains. Getting an idea, Harry gently stuck the sleeping boy's fingers in a goblet full of water that he had filled with the jug near the windowsill after warming it with a charm. He then cast a useful mild sleeping charm used on small animals that he had learnt in the Care of Magical Creatures class from Professor Grubbly Plank. He poured in an extra amount of his magic to ensure that the boy did not wake up till later in the morning. Snickering, Harry slipped out of the dorms. Activating the map and the charm on his necklace, he set off towards the hospital wing. He knew that the necklace would be redundant because of the cloak and also of not much use as at this time of the night, as people would be highly suspicious about any noise and bound to notice, but he used it anyway. Harry made it to the hospital wing in no time, keeping an eye out for Filch and his cat as well as any teachers that had decided to patrol the castle. Once he reached there, he silently eased the doors open and slipped inside. He crept to the end of the room to where he knew Pomfrey had her quarters and office. He slipped inside, thanking his good fortune that the door was open. He found the matron sleeping at her desk, a thin strand of drool connecting the bottom of her mouth to the page of the book she had been reading. Harry nonverbally cast the sleeping charm again on the matron. He was getting rather good at nonverbal spells before slipping back out to the infirmary. Swiftly casting the charm on Ron and Hermione, the only other occupants, he turned his attention onto the one woman he had gone to all this trouble for. He briefly sneered at her before casting a strong stunner. As Umbridge's sleeping body slumped into the bed in unconsciousness, Harry cast a whispered disillusionment charm at her. He had specifically practiced that spell earlier for this purpose. Quietly levitating her, Harry went out into the forest. Stopping a few yards into the forest, near a clearing with a small stagnant pond, concentrating intensely, he cancelled the disillusionment charm while keeping up the levitation charm. He was about to enervate her when another thought came to him. Smiling cruelly, he levitated her a little higher over the shallow pond before enervating the fat toady woman. As soon as he saw the spell impact her body and take effect, he let the levitation charm drop. Immediately, the fat woman's body dropped unceremoniously into the pond. The pond was deep enough to submerge her but too shallow to adequately slow Umbridge's fall, causing her to painfully hit the bottom of the pond. Harry lazily watched Umbridge flounder about wildly. Being enervated before suddenly finding themselves being plunged into a mucky pond really caused one a fair amount of disorientation, Harry noted with glee as he saw the foul woman flail about, convinced she was about to drown. Finally, the former headmistress regained her bearings enough to stand up. She was so shorter the pond was deeper than Harry estimated as the water came up to her neck. Covered head to toe in muck and slime with her already frazzled hair even more dirty, Dolores Umbridge slowly and painfully extricated herself onto solid ground. Harry silently got behind her as she hacked, coughed and puked out the foul water she had inhaled. As soon as he thought she had regained her bearings, he whipped off the cloak, deactivated the necklace and said, "Hello there, Headmistress," stressing on her former title with a sneer on his face. Suddenly, Umbridge jumped and, still choking, slowly turned around to lock eyes with Harry Potter. She barely registered his presence as she looked around her wild-eyed. "Or is it Undersecretary? I forget," said Harry after a pause. Where am I?" stuttered Umbridge fearfully. The last thing she remembered was being in the hospital wing. Harry pretended to look around before saying in mock concern, "A bit lost are we. Shame, whatever shall we do? Why, it seems that we are back in the Forbidden Forest. But you should know that already, after all you are here and have been here before." Harry trailed off, keeping his eyes on her, watching as she squeaked at finding out her location. How did I get here? Said Umbridge fearfully. She finally registered who was talking to her. She shuddered as she saw the cold look on his face and glinting emerald eyes that looked very eerily like the curse he was famed for surviving. Ah, good question. You see, I brought you here, said Harry conversationally. After all, we do not want anybody interfering our little tete-a-tete now, do we? He added maliciously. Umbridge blanched at his last statement. What do you want from me? She shrieked, her voice getting higher. Harry slowly and mockingly shook his head. We really do need to do something about that stutter of yours, it is getting rather tiring. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, you see dear Professor, I wasn't happy to know that you had survived capture at the hands of the Centaurs. No, not at all. After everything you have put me through, and all the trouble me and my friend had gone through to lead you to them, you just did not have the decency to just die, did you? Harry's tone had morphed from mocking to angry by the end of his diatribe. So it looks like I need to handle this myself. After all, as they say, if you want something done right, do it yourself. He cocked his head to one side, twirling his wand between his fingers. Umbridge gulped, nervously eyeing Harry's wand before saying in a falsely confident voice, You wouldn't dare, Potter, I'm the undersecretary to the minister. The minute Cornelius hears about this he will have you expelled and thrown into Azkaban for attacking a ministry employee. Harry threw his head back and laughed. Fudge. He said between bouts of laughter, Ooh, I'm so scared. He mocked, Fudge is too busy covering his stupid pinstriped sweaty ass to bother with you right now. Now that he has seen Voldemort with his own eyes, he snarled. Umbridge flinched at Voldemort's name before recovering, that again. The Dark Lord is dead and gone, you nasty little liar. She raged, it looks like we will have to take more serious measures with you, Mr. Potter. Now get me back to the castle before things become even more dire for you. Shut up, you stupid ch. Snarled Harry, Voldemort has come back. In fact, he was there right in your precious ministry and your dear minister was there to see him personally. It's there in the effing paper too, you silly cow. That twat Fudge is scrambling to cover his ass now that the truth has finally come out. He will be lucky to last a month before being chucked out into the street. Umbridge got paler and paler at this revelation. No, this cannot be. Lucius personally reassured us that. Oh yes, Lucius Malfoy, funny story, he was also there cavorting in full Death Eater regalia along with his other Death Eater friends. In fact, joining them were those who had recently escaped Azkaban, Harry drawled, watching with relish as Umbridge's toady face went even paler with that revelation. In fact, he and 11 others have been caught inside the Department of Mysteries, which they had broken into really easily. By the way, you should really look to increasing your security, because it is just atrocious. Anyway, they should be halfway to Chateau Azkaban for a lovely summer holiday right now. He added, clapping his hands together in mock glee. But enough chit-chat now, the hour is getting late, and I need my beauty sleep. Harry rubbed his hands together. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, he continued. Personally I hope you choose the former for your sake, but I am not adverse to the second choice. Where is my broom? Umbridge remained stubbornly silent. Ah, the hard way then, very well. Saying this, Harry pointed his wand at her and concentrating, flicked his wand, lifting Umbridge into the air before slamming her into the nearest tree. Umbridge landed there with a pained squeal. Harry nodded satisfactorily. He did not know if that would work, but remembering what Voldemort had done to Pettigrew, worked on a hunch that there was no incantation needed for that. Obviously it was what Voldemort had done as well. Still not talking. Very well, with that, he flicked his wand and sent her flying back into the pond. As soon as she hit the water, Harry lifted her up again before plunging her back in. He did this a few times, not giving the former headmistress time to breathe before throwing her back into the same tree she had impacted a few minutes back. Harry watched her hack and cough dispassionately. Are we ready to talk? He said. Go to hell, you stupid little brat. Spat Umbridge vindictively. I will never tell you where your precious broom is. I hope that the trolls break it. You will have to pull it from my mind, and I doubt you can do that, you pathetic little worm. That can be arranged, said Harry with a glint in his eye. With that, he cast a full body bind on her to her shock before levitating her till she was at eye level with him. Looking into her eyes and smirking at the fear he saw in them, he pointed his wand and said, Legilimens. Immediately, He violently dove into the fat woman's mind. He perused all her memories, not caring if he caused her any pain or if he was ripping her sanity apart. He not only extracted the location of his broom, but also found out a lot of her dirty little secrets. A useful piece of information he had found was the utility of the blood quill that she had used to torture the students with. It seemed that it was a family heirloom and had more uses than just torturing people with. Satisfied, he pulled out just as violently from her mind, shredding the last vestiges of her sanity. He watched the gibbering broken woman in front of him in contempt before turning around and heading towards the castle. He did not feel any remorse for his actions. She deserved everything she had coming to her. The last few days of term flew by, and before Harry knew it he was packing his trunk. He had spent the days discreetly going into the room of requirement and practicing spells. He was especially happy with that book he had bought with Dudley in mind, as it was more than worth his money. Harry chuckled to himself. The author was as vindictive as his name, that is, if it was his real name. He had tried it out on dummies so far, but hadn't had the pleasure of seeing their effects on humans. He did not want to risk it right now, even though he was tempted. He would have ample opportunity to test them out this summer. Dudley wouldn't know what hit him. Harry cackled evilly, rubbing his hands. He really should have bought that book ages ago, despite Hagrid not letting him in the summer before first year. It was true that he had picked up most of the spells, but there were some real gems in there that weren't known to the average Hogwarts student. Harry had also read up on some other rituals as well. The adoption ritual